Setting is Kansas City. Scenes take place in Gary and Eytan's living room, guest room, and backyard, with characters and other scenes addressing the audience directly or as a speaker or singer in another venue. Act 1, Scene 1. At Rise, Eytan sits on the living room couch and watches Gary moving around cleaning, kicking strange objects under the couch and sifting through a mountain of junk mail on the coffee table.
Do we want to use these coupons?
No, we don't. We don't eat that nasty food.
Okay, I'll recycle them.
He picks up a pile of coupons and heads off stage into a kitchen area. Eytan calls after him.
You're going to do this one category of junk mail at a time?
You have a problem with my methodical OCD approach?
We don't want to apply for these credit cards either.
Those have plastic film windows. I cut them out with scissors. The plastic goes in the garbage. They're next.
He picks the envelopes from the credit card companies out of the pile of junk mail.
Is she worth all this trouble?
Always good to clean house.
Tell me again why she has to stay with us.
She's my sister, and she's coming to town.
For an academic conference. So won't she want to be at the hotel with all her colleagues, comparing notes at the bar?
The hotel is expensive. The conference isn't until tomorrow. She's renting a car. I think it'll be good for us to spend some time with her and Curtis. You know, two couples hanging out.
Gary uses a stack of envelopes in his hand to sweep crumbs off the table into his other hand. Eytan does not remove his feet from the table, so Gary works around him.
Why is he even coming? He's a gardener, right?
Landscaping or something.
Is he full of literary insight?
He seems like a nice guy. I've met him exactly twice. Remember? Like,
he's not an academic. Is she just bringing him in for show and tell? Hey, look, I may not have any business teaching African American studies, but I married an actual black guy. So...
Eytan, please don't be an asshole to Curtis or Kay. You said you wouldn't.
That was a month ago. It seemed so far away. I thought it would fall through. I thought maybe the world would end. It was easier to say yes.
Well, you're out of luck. The world didn't end, so let's just deal with it. I'll park these envelopes in the kitchen. I'll pick them up later.
Gary exits.
Sorting them into plastic film to throw out and paper parts to recycle? Speaking of OCD...
Gary returns with a broom. He sweeps dirt from the floor and the rug under the couch.
Fine, it's fine, it's fine. If I was properly OCD, I would have done a better job cleaning than this. I'd actually get a fucking vacuum cleaner fixed.
Why are you bothering to clean for her at all?
If people come over for drinks, we clean a little. Yes, if my sister and her husband come to stay with us,
you become the nervous, apologetic little brother, afraid of her temper, and it's sad to watch.
Eytan, she's it. She's it. She's all the family I have at this point, and you said you'd try.
You were foolish to believe me. You've seen me at my worst, and as it happens, my worst was when I was friends with her. What smug, obnoxious 16-year-olds we were, laughing and sneering at everyone and breaking every promise we made, and what utter shits we were to you. And why would you want to bring all that back?
As you say, you were 16 years old. I'm over it. Maybe you should get over it also.
That's the biggest thing wrong with you, Gary. You're too forgiving, too understanding with your witch harpy mother and your witch harpy sister.
A, my mother is dead and we don't talk about her that way. B, my sister is entirely different kind of witch harpy, and you're wrong to conflate the two of them.
And you're too understanding with me also. That's why selfish, vicious, willful, dishonest people like me and Kay take advantage of you. You invite it. You make it so easy for us.
Why do you try so hard to make me see you as all those things?
Listen to yourself, Gary. You're so loving and forgiving. You think I'm trying to hide my gentle, tender heart when all I'm doing is being honest.
No. You're not, but go ahead. Strike a pose. Isn't that what Madonna told you people to do?
I'm not old enough to remember Madonna telling young people to vogue, you son of a bitch.
See? I can hear how woman fuzzy you are underneath it all.
By the way, are we sharing your alter ego with Kay? Are we taking her out to the bar to see you perform?
We're playing it by ear.
Do we really want to hear her turgid, politically formulated pronouncements on the act? Are we allowed to stand up to her and tell her to suck it if she disapproves?
We hope she'll be open-minded and enjoy it. We hope she'll be proud and pleased, but we'll give her some time to relax. Yeah, and be our guest before we spring it on her.
You really don't see that this is your mother all over again, with you soft peddling your identity and somehow hoping you'll get her blessing?
Eytan, one more time, she is all I've got left. It's part of my life, so if she stays with us, she'll probably learn about it, and I'm okay with that.
You're setting yourself up for disappointment and heartbreak. You're playing out the same patterns again and again.
Well, I ultimately reconnected with my mother, so, you know.
Sure. She gave you permission to move back in and wipe drool off her chin and worse, and to coax her to take her pills and dress her and listen to her complain and give up your own life for a year. And all you had to do for such a great privilege was considerately hide every aspect of who you are that she couldn't bear to think about. And so now maybe you'll strike the same kind of bargain with your harpy viper sister.
You know, Eytan, I don't think Kay wants me to feed her pills or hide who I am. I think she wants to reconnect. It's been a long time.
It sure has. And now, finally, she's ready to step into the
And
mom
now,
role.
finally, she's ready to forgive me for eclipsing her and having the end with Mom turn out to be all about me.
What? Are you some kind of saint or victim or holy fool or something? She's ready to forgive you for being there for your mother every day for over a year while Kay was miles away and you took care of the most horrible phase in any child's life.
From Kay's point of view, I eclipsed her. I performed the role that she might have liked to have performed.
You invent these stories.
I'm one to let her do it. They weren't talking and I stepped in. Look, it's complicated. Family's insane, so I try to understand someone else's family.
You're setting yourself up for a weekend of horror.
Oh, no, you're setting me up for a weekend of horror. You're the one making scenes. You've apparently got your heart set on making this whole thing awkward and grisly.
Well, as you yourself admitted when we connected again, me and Kay are two of a kind. You are properly wary of me, and I freely admit, other than the fact that I have some poetry in my soul, and all she has in hers is steel wool and statistics, Kay and I were almost the same person at one point. You hooking up with me was a gargantuan act of masochism.
So, according to your logic, if you're Kay is Mom, that puts you in the mom role. So do me a favor, Mom, and put a sock in it for the duration. I mean it.
I'll be lovely to her. I'll be a perfect gentleman.
God.
There is no God.
I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
It'll be a charming weekend. We'll all have a wonderful time.
What condition is the bathroom in? I mean, ours. I mean, the main one I've spruced up. The guest one.
It's functional.
Functional. I cleaned it on Tuesday, so maybe I can just give it another maybe.
How harshly were you toilet trained? Did Kay and your mother supervise the process together? Did they stand over you and make critical remarks?
Maybe. I don't remember. It doesn't sound like something they would have done. They probably had Margarita do it.
Margarita, yeah, I could use one right about now.
I wish I could have Margarita around every day of my life.
Well, she was perfectly nice. Well, she's dead.
Yeah. I wonder if Kay knows.
I wonder if Kay would care.
What about the kitchen? Yeah, I can maybe I should.
The doorbell rings.
Too late. Saved by the bell from a cleaning jag.
You were the saved by the bell generation.
Me and Kay. It's good to have some identity.
Gary goes to the door.
Hey, you found it.
We found it.
It's good to see you guys. Was parking okay?
He comes back in with Kay and Curtis. Curtis carries the bags for both of them.
Yeah, right up front.
No, not so bad around here.
I like this street.
Yeah, we like it too. Most of the residential, but there's little dumpling fusion place down the block.
Thought that looked promising. Hey, Eytan. How are you?
Doing all right, Kay.
It's good to see you. This is Curtis.
Know you?
Yes.
So you rented a car, right?
Yeah, it's a nice little car.
Hey, listen, Gary.
Yeah.
Are we going to be staying in here? Because I can just put the bags by the
Oh, no, Doc, crap. No, sorry. This isn't a fold-out situation. Let me show you where your room is. You guys are gonna be right down the hall and on the left.
Got it. Sounds good.
Curtis exits.
Curtis drove us, of course. I get freaked out outside my comfort zone. I hate airports and dislocation, and I don't like driving a car that's not mine in a city I don't know.
He seems to take very good care of you.
He does take very good care of me.
I wasn't trying to.
It doesn't matter. It's okay. I don't care if you're trying to be snarky or not. It's true that Curtis takes very good care of me.
Well, you should let us take care of you guys for a few days. We can whip something up, kind of dinner here, or we could check out the dumpling shop.
Oh, either sounds great. Maybe dumplings. Marillion is such a parochial little college town. They're kind of hurting when it comes to Chinese food.
Well, Kansas City isn't really known for its Asian food either, but the dumpling place is decent.
Yeah, that's a nice little room.
Yeah, we've had a few guests tell us the bed's actually pretty comfortable.
And those clothes on the bed, are those you want to give Kay? I'm not sure they fit her.
What clothes on the bed?
There's like a skirt and top all covered with spangles.
Why would those have been on the bed? It wasn't on the bed 20 minutes ago when I was last in the room.
Whoops, I guess it's something I left there. It's something I've been sewing. I should have put it away.
Really? You've taken up sewing, Eytan?
It's wonderful, the things you can create. I'm very proud of that ensemble with the beadwork and...
Do you sell the clothes you make?
Oh no, I'm afraid they're not for sale.
So, have you become a transgender person? Or...
No, they're not for me either.
The clothes are for me, Kay. I dress in drag sometimes and I sing in a cabaret act. I was probably going to tell you about it at some point this weekend, but it seems Eytan has decided to fuck with me a little bit and start things off with a bang.
That would sound very much in character for Eytan.
Very much. I'm so sorry. I'll go get my things off of your bed.
He exits.
So, Gary sings in drag and you make all of his outfits?
Oh, he helps design them and we write the songs together.
Oh, so he's not doing cover tunes?
Oh, no. It's an all original act.
Well, great.
Yes, it is great. He's wonderful.
Does he have a stage name?
He does. It's Ovaria Strange.
That's precious.
I'm glad you like it.
And what is it that you do these days, Eytan?
Oh, I play second violin in a symphony orchestra, and that doesn't pay the bills. So I also teach music at a high school.
Same school as Gary?
No. He's middle school, 5th grade this year. 30 kids in the class.
Yes, middle school, that's right.
Gary enters.
Okay, so the stuff is out of your room and hopefully nothing else that's odd or out of place will be surfacing in there. Will it, Eytan?
No, absolutely not.
Great.
Well, maybe we'll just take a moment to freshen up.
Oh yeah, sure. There's a bathroom right off the guest room. It's got a shower and everything.
Awesome.
Kay and Curtis exit.
Let's reconvene in 40 minutes or whenever for a dumpling run. Why?
You get so closety around women in your family.
You said that you wouldn't.
I said I wouldn't be rude. I wouldn't attack her. And I haven't.
No, but you wanted to create tension. You were looking to make trouble. You were looking to ruin things.
Why are you so ashamed of who you are? After all of these years.
Don't pretend. This is about being queer and proud, or about empowering me and liberating me from my family or whatever, all the horse shit. Your motives aren't even close to that noble. No.
See, at least you're learning. I'm a bastard, just like Kay.
Lights down, end of scene 1. Scene 2, lights up on the guest room. It contains a double bed and a comforter. The bags Curtis carried are by the bed. Curtis sits on the bed going through things in his bag. Kay pays.
It was a bad idea. It's not worth the money we're saving.
Yeah, you may be forgetting how much the hotel rooms cost.
I know, that was ridiculous. That's their idea of a bargain rate for those who are not only attending, but speaking at the conference? Ugh.
Your brother seems to be trying.
Sure, Gary means well, but why let Eytan back into my life? Why give him a chance to mess with me?
Laugh it off. Don't let him get to you.
And I'm not sure how I feel about this drag business. Do you ever watch RuPaul's Drag Race?
RuPaul does NASCAR stuff?
No. If you're seriously asking. On Logo, the gay channel. It's like Project Runway, but for gay men in drag.
Can't say I've seen it.
Well, I hate it. It's so insipid and shallow. I hate every female wannabe on the show, and I wind up hating RuPaul.
But don't you also hate Project Runway?
Well, sure.
So this only proves you don't like reality shows.
Hey, I like Animal Cops Houston.
On Animal Planet.
Right. I just think that the animal cops and the vets and even the dogs and cats and horses have so much more depth and self-awareness and poetry in their souls than any Kardashian, including Kate, who thinks that what makes someone a woman is wearing nail polish long enough for it to chip. More than any real housewife.
But if Animal Cops is the only one you can handle, don't hold it against your brother that there's a scripted fake reality show about men in dresses that you're not into.
But it makes Logo as a station so degrading in a way for gay men, the way BET is for people of color, you know? Like it's so intentionally designed to thwart its own potential and possibilities and be superficial and reinforce caricatured stereotypes. And it's not just that it's a reality show, it's grating. I watch those men dressing up as divas, sometimes mansplaining to biological women how to be more feminine or vampy and mocking us, reiterating all those tired old campy tropes, tossing off these bitchy, supposedly witty comments to each other. I just feel my blood boil.
Well, maybe we don't tell your brother you feel that way.
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, of course not.
Especially if Eytan is trying to sabotage this visit and make trouble between you and Gary. Why take the bait? Why allow him to do that?
You're right.
Why give him the opening?
Especially when my views on the subject are absolutely verboten now. Eytan would tear me apart, limb from limb, like I was J.K. Rowling.
Huh. How do you feel about that? Well, you know what she said. What Rowling said about trans people.
Well, I don't think it's half as bad as people say it is.
You know, I've never read her letter or whatever it was. I've only seen summaries.
Well, she sure didn't deserve to be canceled for it, and having all the Harry Potter people condemn her. She didn't deserve to be called a TERF.
Called a what?
A trans exclusionary radical feminist. She said that when she was geeky and young, she wasn't happy with the role society gave to females, so she figures she might have seen herself as trans if people declared it all the time back then, the way they do now. She worries that young women think they're trans now and start treatment to transition, and if they change their mind later, they can't have children. She said a ton of girls are suddenly deciding they're trans, sometimes in groups of friends, and transitioning and detransitioning. A lot of them grow out of their gender dysphoria.
That sounds messed up.
She supports research into MS, which affects men and women differently, and she wants to prevent erosion of the distinction between the sexes in medical research. She lives in Scotland, where a guy can just say he's a woman without long-term counseling or surgery or taking hormones, and right away, legally he is one. And that makes her uncomfortable. That she might be in a woman's locker room or a dorm for a women's conference or a women's camping ground, and any guy who wants to register as a woman can go there.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen. I mean, straight sexual predators saying that they're women? There were those commercials about the bathrooms.
In Houston.
Yeah, with the guy in the plaid shirt following the little girl into the public bathroom just because trans people were getting rights.
Sure. Yes, those were scary and misleading ads. But Rowling, expressed empathy with trans women who get battered and raped and killed, saying she's a survivor of assault. And she says she knows the violence she experienced years ago makes her funny in the head about stuff like that. She just thinks that women have a right to single-sex spaces without people who have penises being there. She makes it clear she's not sure that's rational.
Okay.
She just wants to stand up for people who were born women as a class and in a group that gets kicked around the way gay people and trans people do. But the people she tried to talk to couldn't hear that. And God knows Eytan wouldn't. He'd be salivating at a chance to go after me if he finds out I have even mixed feelings about this. He's just looking for something like this to exploit.
Dude coming in, what his MO would be.
It was my MO too once. We imprinted on each other during our most insufferable teenage years.
Yeah, well, you outgrew it.
Not entirely.
It's nice that your brother and this guy, that they're happy and they're doing creative stuff together, even if you think it's shallow.
Well, Eytan was always on the lookout for someone to collaborate with. When we were in high school, we were going to write a world-shattering rock musical together. Lyrics by me, music by him. It was going to be some Bonnie and Clyde update about two ruthless, clever people, maybe in high school, maybe older, out in the art world, who destroy the people in power and help the tortured weaklings.
That's nice.
In our minds, we'd be heroic revolutionaries, but really it would have just been an excuse for us to be sadistic and superior.
You got any songs from it you can show me?
Nope, not even one. I am not a lyricist or any kind of artist. That was when I was starting to realize that I can write about texts and analyze them, but I can't create them. I wonder if my brother can.
It's not a competition.
No, it's not.
You gotta let all that stuff go.
Don't worry, Curtis. It's been a long time since I dreamed of writing a rock and roll musical.
You want to take a shower?
No, I'm good. I'll wash my face, gonna comb through my hair.
How about a little back rub to help you relax?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. Whoa, big knot you got back there. Lots of tension. Gotta work it on out.
Thank you, baby. That really helps.
Yeah, it does. Along with Zen thoughts.
Zen thoughts. And then I can serenely eat my dumplings and let Eytan snark away.
Lights down, end of scene 2. Scene 3, lights come up. Gary's standing alone near the edge of the stage. He addresses the audience.
Margarita lived with us, and I liked to hide out in her room. After Dad left, my mom was so depressed she kind of shut down. And she was never a warm and fuzzy mom, never a hugger to begin with. So Margarita was raising me at that point more than ever. Kay didn't have much use for her. Margarita taught me Espanol. She had a warm Dominican accent, but Kay could never really be bothered to learn, and that was fine. Spanish became our secret language. Margarita didn't mind if I hid out in her room when she wasn't there. I liked her closet best. My mother's clothes were all beige and gray and preppy and tasteful, and mostly just harsh to touch. And working at the bank, she wore linen blouses and tweed skirts and all these scratchy wool things with a sensible strand of pearls. Margarita's clothes were soft cotton and nylon and polyester and taffeta, and they were all in these vibrant sunset colors, orange and red and yellow, burgundy, hot pink, and violet in this exploding sunburst combination. When I was small, I could just stand up in that closet and be lost in those dresses. They smelled like her perfume, and some of them had fun stuff hanging on them, like clink and clink. When she eventually found me in there with the dress part way on, she thought it was strange, maybe, but she didn't kick me out. And when she found out, that I was at her vanity, trying on her makeup, that was also in all those bright, wild colors, she worried she might get fired. But she wasn't out to condemn me or betray me. When I was a teen, when Kay was off at college and Mom was gone for hours, Margarita eventually became okay with me trying on the clothes and the makeup. And I was someone else. I could escape from that cold, nasty house and be fabulous. Hablando mi otro idioma y escuchando a mi propia música en la radio. O en mi mente. Just lost in a world of my own. There are worse ways to get through adolescence, I guess.
Lights down, end of scene 3. Scene 4. Lights come up in the living room area. The meal is winding down. Curtis and Kay sit on the couch, and Gary and Eytan sit on the floor. Everyone has chopsticks and water or soda to drink. Plates hold a few last pot stickers are on the table, along with dipping sauce.
And you can really imagine spending your lives in that town.
Well, downtown Marillion isn't all that exciting, but you get a few interesting shops in a college town, and since tenure-track jobs aren't easy to come by, if I do get tenure, it's hard to imagine giving it up and going back to adjunct hell.
That's fair. And do you like it there, Curtis?
Yeah, I pretty much got our house in shape. We're renting, but we could buy. I've been making little improvements to the property, so it would be a good investment. I got some ideas about changing up the house itself. And I've got some steady clients in the area now.
You tend their gardens for them, prune their hedges?
Well, it's usually a lot more than that. People come to me and ask me to reconceive all of their outdoor space. Japanese rock gardens, gazebos, a copse of trees, water running through the property.
Well, it sounds like you got some pretty rich people out there.
Those are usually the ones who give me a call. Well, some people are one-offs. They just need some emergency garden therapy.
And what is it exactly that you're teaching these days, Kay?
I teach for 2 programs, Women and Gender Studies and African American Studies. But I teach some interdisciplinary courses that appeal to students involved with both. There's actually a lot of theoretical overlap.
Is that right? Because I've been wondering how you wound up teaching African American studies.
Well, my first book was about Fannie Hurst.
Who?
Fannie Hurst. She was a very popular writer in the early 20th century till she went out of fashion. She wrote Imitation of Life.
What's that?
Well, did you ever see it as a film? There are 2 versions, one from the 30s with Claudette Colbert and Louise Beavers, and then the Douglas Sirk one from 1959 with Lana Turner and Juanita Moore.
Nope. Sorry.
You've never seen that film?
No.
Damn, like when I was growing up, the women in my family all liked to watch that. Every time it came on TV. The ending, the funeral scene, my mom's used to really tear up at that.
Yeah, I think I've seen the Douglas Sirk one. Didn't it have Gidget as the obnoxious blonde daughter?
Sandra Dee. Yes.
Yeah, then I have seen it. And I believe there was a drag parody of it. Imitation of Life, it was called.
Well, there have been a lot of parodies of it. Langston Hughes wrote one called The Limitations of Life back in the 1930s, where the rich woman is black and she has an Oxford accent, and her servile, mammy-like maid is a white woman who wouldn't dream of accepting her fair share of profits from the business she's helped the rich woman build. It was a pretty biting satire, though Langston considered Fanny Hurst a friend to some degree.
Well, you can't be thin-skinned when your friends parody you.
So in my doctoral dissertation, which became my first book, I examined the politics of that novel, how well-intentioned Hurst was, how progressive she saw herself as being, but still all the privileging binaries of our cultural discourse she was drawing on, reinforcing the myth of the devoted mammy figure taking care of a white family, and then the politics of the plot about the daughter trying to pass as white, the old melodramatic trope of the person with one drop of black blood.
Wait. I'm confused now. Sandra Dee plays the black person?
No, I mean the other daughter, the black woman's daughter.
Sandra Dee plays Lana Turner's daughter, out to steal her mother's man, and they're both blonde Hellcats.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's Douglas Sirk for you. Punish a woman for being a single working mother with ambition. Turn her into a grasping, selfish monster who earns the audience's disapproval. I know I'm supposed to see his films as playing with artifice and deconstructing gender roles, all ironic, like a Roy Lichtenstein painting or a Cindy Sherman movie still, but I'm not convinced. Anyhow, the novel doesn't posit the mother in such a negative light. Exactly. I mean, in the novel, the daughter does get the man, so in a sense, the mother is punished for stepping outside the traditional female sphere and desiring a younger, less powerful male. But the novel is sympathetic to her. She's more of a tragic figure.
So this writer,
Fanny Hurst.
Fanny Hurst, is a great overlooked author that you're helping to rediscover?
She wasn't overlooked in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. She was one of the most famous writers in the country. And then modernism came along and the ideal of the macho, Ernest Hemingway kind of writer. And so Hurst was dismissed by critics as being too female and emotional and apolitical. But of course, she wasn't apolitical, she was a feminist. But the male critics ignored that. Just like Richard Wright dismissed Zora as apolitical, he had no use for feminism either.
Zora.
Zora Neale Hurston. She wrote Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Oh, yes, of course. Zora. I'm just not familiar with her on a first-name basis.
She was good friends with Fanny Hurst, as it happens, but the friendship was complicated.
But it's great that you're helping bring back this wonderful person and her book.
Well, I wish I could say that. People write mean songs about her. Mel Brooks has a song in a movie, hope for the best, expect the worst. You could be Tolstoy or Fanny Hurst. Mike Nichols and some guy had a song in a review, you're Kippers and Caviar, I'm Liverwurst, you're Shakespeare, you're Shaw, I'm Fanny Hurst. Something like that. I wish I could say they were wrong.
So she's terrible.
She's not terrible. She builds elaborate plots with lots of momentum. She tackled social issues that others were afraid of.
But her prose is excrement.
No, not excrement. A few mixed metaphors, some repetition, some unlikely scenarios, and not so accurate phrases.
So she's deservedly forgotten.
She opens a window on another time in American history, both the aesthetics of that moment and the socio-political realities. And she's valuable for that.
Well,
anyhow, I wrote about her and Imitation of Life, especially, and an academic press put out my book. And Marillion is a small college. They like people who can pitch hit in several departments. Then they were looking to expand both women and gender studies and African American studies, and I applied at the right time.
Well, that's great. It's great that you got tenure track. I mean, teaching school kids is rough enough now in some ways, but it's nothing like what I hear the job market is for college professors.
Yes, the job market sucks. I got lucky.
And you're continuing to work this angle. Is your talk at the conference tomorrow on Fanny Hurst?
She only comes up once in the paper I'm giving because she was friends with Zora and Langston. It'll be on a postmodernism and gender panel, and one on Langston's influence on Afro-Caribbean writers. But the paper I'm giving is on Yule Bone. That's a play that Langston and Zora wrote.
Mulebone.
Yes, it wasn't produced until 60 years after they wrote it. There's a whole falling out over it. It destroyed their friendship.
With Fanny Hurst.
With each other. Zora claimed she wrote it by herself. She copyrighted it in her name. We have a lot of angry correspondence between them and third-party accounts. It's kind of a mystery about what happened. It had to do with Charlotte Osgood Manson, a rich, older white woman who's a patron to both of them. She made all the Harlem Renaissance writers that she gave money to and advised. She had them all call her godmother. And Alain Locke, he was another one of her godchildren. He was generally pretty openly and cheerfully misogynistic. But in this case, he helped Zora shut Langston out of Godmother's good graces. Perhaps because Langston had spurned him romantically, but we can't know these things for sure.
Had Langston spurned Zora romantically?
Well, they had known each other for years. They had traveled through the South together. Zora said she loved him like a brother. It's hard to know. There was another woman involved, Louise Thompson. She was paid a little by Godmother to type for Langston and Zora when they were boarders in a house in New Jersey. But she wasn't paid to type the play. The play was a secret because Godmother didn't approve. So Langston suggested cutting Louise in for some of the profits or making her the play's business manager. Zora felt Louise and Langston were conspiring behind her back. She overreacted. Carlo thought Zora was jealous of Louise. Carl Van Vechten, that is. He was another one of the rich white people Zora and Wallace Thurman called Negrotarians. They were all about helping promoting Negro artists. He spent a lot of time uptown, and he wrote a sort of infamous novel.
Nigga heaven.
Yeah, about Harlem. A lot of people were offended by the title and the way it made life uptown sound wild, but Zora and Langston both liked that book. Langston just thought it was a poorly chosen title, just like his own book of poems, Fine Clothes to the Jew.
Fine Clothes to the Jew?
Yes, he meant a pawn shop. Relax, Eytan. Langston liked Jews. His high school buddies in Cleveland were Jews. He was 1/8 Jewish himself.
Was Langston Hughes gay?
The jury's still out. His biographer, Arnold Rampersad, thought he had more of a kind of Michael Jackson thing going on.
Excuse me?
I just mean in the sense that he presented himself at all times as childlike and innocent and naive. He saw himself as a kind of Peter Pan. Most of his friends never figured out what his sexuality was, or if he had one. Most of the guys involved in the Harlem Renaissance were gay. Most of the, Zora and Thurman came up with a name for the whole group of them.
The niggerati.
Right. That was their ironic spin on literati.
That's very tactful how he does that for you. Do you get up and do that for her when she presents a paper, too?
No, I do not.
There's no need. Those terms don't come up in my paper. Anyhow, most of the guys were gay. Locke and Thurman himself, who was actually married to Louise Thompson for a while before she found out, and County Cullen and Claude McKay and Carlo, who hung out in Harlem a lot. Langston may have played mind games with Locke and Cullen, and maybe even Zora. Who knows? He was never involved with Louise.
So Zora wasn't gay.
Well, she might have had a thing for a while with Ethel Waters. She wrote some ambiguous things about her, but not primarily.
Well, it sounds like quite a little Peyton place.
Yes, but obviously I don't get into all that in my paper.
Well, that's too bad. What do you get into?
Well, if you really want to hear about it.
Oh, I do. I do.
I look at what Zora and Langston were trying to achieve in Mulebone in terms of reconceiving ethnography. Zora trained as an anthropologist under Franz Boas at Columbia when she was a Barnard student. She went down south to gather songs and folklore and examples of local idiom. She studied how to conjure, but ultimately she eschewed the illusion of objectivity in social science. And she deliberately blurred distinctions between different kinds of texts, the scholarly and creative, for example. Even in her scholarly work, she embraced subjectivity and reflexivity.
What, she had good reflexes, you mean?
She recognized that she brought her own subjective views to her research, and she acknowledged that her presence in a room full of people she was observing affected what happened in that room.
Aha! Well, couldn't you have just said that?
I just did.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't keep up. For a moment, it just sounded like a jumble of jargon and bullshit theory to me.
I'll try to dumb things down for you.
Thanks so much. So, your paper's about anthropology.
Well, it's also about the play and the socioeconomic, about the various pressures that led to the breach between Langston and Zora as the Great Depression started. I'm looking at the dialogic. In a sense, their text, their play is in a dialogue with other texts, but also with the actual events in their lives. And so I look at that in the paper. The dialectic of the real and imagined worlds.
The dialogical dialogue.
If you'd like.
It actually sounds really interesting. Okay, I don't know about any of that stuff. It's actually kind of amazing how much I don't know about the Harlem Renaissance. I probably know a few Langston Hughes poems. A dream deferred as a raisin in the sun. Something like that. That's about it.
They're both really good writers, Langston and Zora.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shame they had such an ugly falling out. But Eytan may be right. Enough about my silly postmodernist theory. Tell me about the character you become when you go to drag clubs, Gary. Is it the same character every time?
Well, it's evolving. She's becoming less glitzy and sexy, more of a country singer. We may have to do away with the name Ovaria Strange. May end up calling her Tammy something. Miss you, Ray.
Yeah. I guess you weren't aware that I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Just a touch of it, which has messed with my fertility in a big way and my health in some others. So I guess I don't find it rip-roaringly funny that you call yourself Ovaria Strange. But, whatever.
Hey, they could not have known that.
No, we didn't know that, but guess it's further incentive for us to look around for a new name for the character.
But not a reason for us to panic or apologize, since we didn't know anything about it.
So Gary, you're into country music?
Oh, yeah, we aren't necessarily.
But Ovaria is.
The character is.
Could we hear one of your songs?
Now?
I'm really curious.
I don't know. I mean, I rehearse here with Eytan, but when I perform as the character, I normally get into costume. And
well, let's just see how you rehearse. Just keep it informal.
You could try the Idaho song. It needs work. We could use the feedback.
Really? I'd rather play something we've got polished and feel strong about.
They'll say what they think, and then we can polish it up, or give it the axe.
Eytan goes to the piano.
Are you shocked to find me dressing like a hoe? I was all buttoned up not long ago. I sure was different when you last were in this state, but you've come back much too late. You came through Idaho took my innocence, left me cold as old French fries. My dream was a spud that proved a dud. I yielded, love was blind, but Idaho you left behind. Now my reputation's down the drain. You mashed my hopes and filled my heart with pain. I got the name, so I got the game. I turn tricks on the side. I'm salty thanks to all the tears I've cried. You came through Idaho and told me pretty lies. You took my innocence, left me cold as old French fries. Once I was your hot little tater tot. You seemed so warm and kind, but Idaho you left behind. Every potato has its eye. Every ruined bad girl can thank one skanky guy. You came through Idaho and told me pretty lies. You took my innocence, left me cold as old French fries. Now I'm loaded and baked full of meth, you snake, and I bet that you don't mind that. Idaho, Idaho, Idaho you left behind.
That's cute. That's cute. I like that.
Well, it doesn't sound unpolished, as you said. It sounds like the two of you have really worked on it.
Yeah, I pretty much think it is what it is at this point, you know, for better or worse.
I see that you're not just making fun of women. It's people out in rural America too that you're going after.
Here we go. That's my K. Here it comes.
We're not going after anybody. It's a silly little novelty song.
But the source of the humor is to look down your nose and mock a few different groups. Young women who get used by the first men they date, and people who live in an unglamorous state like Idaho.
The source of the humor is a ridiculous pun on the word Idaho.
I did get that, yes.
And a bushel of potato metaphors, which I don't usually come up in broken-hearted love songs, but they do here because people associate potatoes with the state, Idaho. That's about it, really.
See, Gary, why are you wasting your time trying to explain a funny song to an essentially humorless person like your sister? She'll only analyze it for the dialectical, ethnographic reflexivity.
I'm more likely to analyze it as a big old Eytan sneer writ large. I'm just curious about all the different kinds of people you're sneering at. And yeah, I guess I don't see the humor in sneering anymore, so I am pretty humorless in this context.
Look, it's not at all that funny a song. It's certainly not an attack on women.
Well, no more than drag is generally.
Come again.
I mean, in some sense, drag is obviously a parody of women, of the female. That's the whole point. Whether it says something about the kind of intrinsic misogyny in gay culture in general or not.
Hooray! No more holding back, homophobic, uptight man-haters. Start your engines.
Of course, I don't for a minute pretend that all gay men are as misogynist as you are, Eytan.
Well, very few of them, in fact.
But if we look at the names drag queens take, if we look at the jokes and the behavior, we can see a grotesque, exaggerated male view of the female.
Kay, take it easy.
I know I said I wouldn't, but this is beyond the issue of Eytan winding me up. I'm just curious about what my brother thinks he's doing here.
What I'm doing is expressing something inside of me that has no other outlet. Something that perhaps I was born with, or that I learned from Margarita, or something positive that celebrates the feminine. It's so sad that you can't see that. I mean, you only heard one song and you've not seen me in that persona.
As Ovaria Strange.
You haven't seen me transformed. But it does feel like a transformation. And there are men who are a whole lot more inhibited and repressed than I am. And after growing up in the home, I certainly do have my inhibited and repressed side.
Yes, so do I. that has nothing to do with
But
gender.
I'm saying there are men who think being a real man means you never flirt or make certain jokes, never cry or show love or pain or empathy or compassion in public. And they are able to not only express, but to even access in the first place all those feelings through cross-dressing. And still you have to go and project ugliness and anger onto it. I mean, I'm sorry, Kay, but couldn't that say more about you than it does about drag?
You know, white men in minstrel shows felt the same way about what they were expressing. That's one reason Langston and Zora wrote Mulebone, to counterbalance vaudeville shows by whites that depicted blacks in overalls singing happy songs out in the fields, and to get past white performers with cork on their faces. Someone like Al Jolson, he felt he was accessing an innocent, primitive, joyful side of himself when he put on blackface, expressing emotions that he usually kept inside. Those men in 1880 or 1900 or 1920 could be sexual once they corked up and moved to syncopated songs. They could laugh, cry like children, sing about Mammy. They felt transformed. They felt so authentic. And yet they weren't really black men at all. They just thought they were.
And that's what you think drag is? A minstrel show?
Could you explain to me the difference?
Sure, Kay, I'd be glad to. Only, wow, this is impressive even for you. The level of closed-mindedness and willful ignorance. Where to start? Okay, let's see. There are some people who are born with both a penis and a vagina. Some choose to keep both. Some others choose to be male, and some choose to be female and have one set of organs removed. Are they wrong when they do that? Are they part of a minstrel show?
There are also biracial people. They don't really have to choose to be one thing or another anymore. People don't pass like they do that girl in Imitation of Life.
People don't play down some part of their ethnic or racial origin?
Some people may, and if they do, they're probably limiting themselves, but it's none of my business what people do.
None of this is any of your business. People should be whoever they want to be. But let me ask you this. What about people who are born biologically male or biologically female, who go through life from early childhood sensing that the gender assigned to them is wrong? It's an accident of nature. Some of them go through painful, radical surgery in order to change genders. And those people are even more vulnerable to discrimination and hate crimes than the average gay guys like Gary and me. They get murdered at astonishingly high rates, especially transgender women of color. Are you fucking kidding me that I have to explain all this to you? And as it happens, those people are under siege, persecuted by smug, righteous, straight, cisgender people like yourself. You and J.K. Rowling.
Oh, here we go. You called it.
I know, right?
What is this? Some sort of adorable private joke that you're sharing?
No, never mind.
As I was saying, people who face that kind of discrimination and violence have it pretty tough. But, oh no, maybe it's a game. Maybe I'm wrong. They're all privileged vaudevillians, just grinning and waving their hands in white gloves and singing and dancing in a minstrel show. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you tell your students in women and gender studies class, that there's no such thing as a transgendered person? It's all made up?
I never said anything like that.
You did! If you really see drag as a minstrel show, as a game, I don't think there were too many white guys in 1910 who felt a biological need to be black. That was the main form of entertainment, so that's what they did, and that's all.
So my brother feels a biological need to dress up in drag?
Your brother may have some kind of need, yes. He may have an androgynous side he wants to explore. Lots of people do.
Look, we're conflating a number of things here. Gender and race are both social constructs, they're both metaphors, but our bodies are also marked in real terms by gender and race.
Would that be the dialectic of the real and the imaginary?
You're damned right. And yes, gender may be more mutable and complicated than race in biological terms, but let's not ignore the sociological side of this. We do live in a society where men occupy positions of power and privilege and generally control media and entertainment and the cultural narrative, just as white people did in the 20th century, and where women are also subject to harassment and violence. And it is a kind of game for men to dress up as women and appropriate our voices and images and parody us, still, as it was for whites to put on blackface and do the buck and wing or play Bones and Tambo 100 years ago. The paradigms are similar. You're being willfully ignorant if you pretend not to see that, just as you're being dishonest if you ignore the misogynistic aspects of drag.
The misogynist aspects of some drag acts, Kay. Let's not make sweeping generalizations. It's true there may be some drag queens who share my general lack of patience with the way some biological women behave. But then there are people like Gary who have nothing against women, however much justification there would be given the women in his family for him to morph into a raving misogynistic serial killer.
Thank you so much. That's almost redundant, by the way, given how many serial killers are raving misogynists. But how about acknowledging, for once, the position of power and sense of entitlement men feel in relation to women, whether the men decide to dress up and identify as women or not?
Really, Kay? Again, how can I get through to you about this? Men in drag and transgender women have very little power in our society. They're lucky to get through high school alive. Government pushes back on their rather humble wish to use a bathroom stall or serve their country. They're often shamed and rejected by their families, or do you pretend not to know that?
Of course. But a man can grow up and decide he's transgender and still have subconsciously absorbed a sense of male entitlement. Parents interrupt their daughters twice as often as they interrupt their sons. And subtle aspects of socialization like that affect everyone who is born male. They think it all revolves around them. So when Martha Plimpton stages an event to protect abortion rights in Texas called A Night of a Thousand Vaginas, she gets attacked on Twitter for being cis-sexist and alienating transgender women who don't have vaginas. God forbid women for whom reproductive rights are a real issue try to come together and fight that battle themselves. And I want to know how those people, born men who insist they're women too, and they have to be included on the battle for reproductive rights, how are they any different than the men in Congress lecturing women on what they may and what we may and may not do with our bodies? What do they know about any of it?
Well, you said the fear of getting pregnant is not a real issue for you either. Should you be included?
Watch it. You stay away from that subject.
It's all right, Curtis. The kind of cheap shot I'd expect from him. I've been trying to get pregnant, yes, but I defend every woman's right to choose, and only some male idiot like you would find that confusing or something to joke about. You and some good old boy senator, I don't see a difference.
Well, you always did have trouble with fine distinctions. Is that why you can't distinguish between transgender people in minstrel shows?
I am saying the issue of trans people is complicated, and so is drag. Will you really not say what you know and admit that there's an overall trend towards hostility towards women when it comes to drag?
Gladly. What the hell? If you will admit an overall trend in feminism toward man-hating and self-righteous humorlessness and a puritanical hatred of sex and fun and glitter and spangles and perfume and fabulousness and a marked tendency toward homophobia directed at gay men who see through you and call you on all of the above.
A distaste towards gay men who caricature women.
Who reflect the fabulous potential and also the cattiness of women that you don't want to see.
Who think they're embodying women, except they bring to it a level of testosterone-driven aggression, competitive, schoolyard, little boy meanness that no woman has ever felt. And they call that a reflection of femininity.
Oh, now, honey, you've got more testosterone-driven aggression in one little finger.
Hey, guys, come on, take it easy now.
Yeah. Curtis and I are gonna have to separate you two. We're gonna have to give you a freaking timeout if you don't stop. Kay, Eytan, down. Kay, down.
Notice, Gary, I may have twitted her. I may have made a few remarks about her silly theoretical newspeak, but I didn't take her on directly until she launched a direct attack on the act after asking to hear you sing a song.
let me try to give her a different perspective about cross-dressing, and maybe it'll leave the atmosphere a little less charged than when you two decided to get out.
Go ahead.
Yes, Gary, I'd be glad to see how you see it.
Great, thanks. I guess I'd say, well, it doesn't sound like a good idea now for you to come out to the bar tomorrow night and see the act.
You're performing
Uh,
Saturday night?
I'm scheduled to, yes, but I don't know if you've got things with your conference.
Nothing so far.
Or I don't even know if this is a good idea. But if you came to the bar, you'd see some things I'm sure you'd find objectionable. You'd hear jokes you don't like, and you'd see performers you just find puerile. I mean, here we are in Kansas City, and the Midwest, it's not like New York and New Jersey. Out here, if a man puts on a dress, it's seen as wildly outrageous and the most hilarious thing possible. And it's kind of sad how taboo and naughty people think that is. But over time, they may grow up and they may get more comfortable with how fluid things can be. Being male, being female, I see it as fluid. I see racial differences as a little more fluid now. Maybe everybody's a metaphor for everybody else now. You know, you were talking about race and gender as metaphors. So maybe we can all, have fun and play. I don't think that it's more fluid now because there were minstrel shows back in the day. I think it may be more fluid now because of white people dancing badly to rock and roll for so long that they finally discovered their hips and learned to dance well.
Okay, I love rock and roll. That's not a minstrel show.
Well, it is and it isn't. According to your definition, it's cultural appropriation of a black form. Like take Elvis, for example. I mean, Eytan makes a case. Never mind. But anyhow, what I'm saying about the bar is you'd see drag kings as well as queens. You wouldn't see this as a zero-sum game, women versus gay men and trans people. It would, you might see all of these people as natural allies. You'd see women who dress up as men, gay and straight women. You'd see women with drag queen best friends who share clothes and makeup tips and gossip. And you might hear some bad acts, but also some really witty and genuinely good ones. You might see women being empowered and old stereotypes held up and shaken and questioned. And you might see creative, hopeful things.
You can only see what she wants to see. It's just as you said when she first launched into this stuff. She'd project her own inner ugliness on everyone around her. She's far too dried out and rigid to understand playfulness and self-invention.
Eytan, tell me this. When we were in high school, why did it piss you off so much to see Italians and others playing Jews all the time in the films? Why can't everyone just invent themselves and play any role? Why can't white actors put on blackface anymore? Or play Asians with eye makeup if it's all about self-invention?
I admit I got tired of seeing other people playing Jews because there weren't many roles for Jews and there weren't that many famous Jewish actors.
Oh, how about three-dimensional roles for strong women? Are there a lot of those?
But I would beat up anyone who would recast the HBO film of Angels in America with Al Pacino playing Roy Cohn and Meryl Streep playing Ethel Rosenberg. I wouldn't change a thing about it because they were amazing. And I could handle Meryl in drag playing an Orthodox rabbi with a beard in that. And I was fine with Pacino playing Shylock in Merchant of Venice. And so the answer is that if you're good, you can get away with it, with appropriation, with trying to channel somebody from the other alien group.
That is what my research is about. Appropriation and the perception of the other.
Good for you. My point is, if you're bad, if you fail, you deserve to fail. You deserve to fall flat on your face because you took the risk. But if it works, then of course it works. And it's not a minstrel show after all, and you had every right to do it. That Idaho song, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's not ready for prime time. But I dare you to come out to the bar tomorrow night and hear the songs that Gary has in his act. The songs of ours that we know work. I dare you to dismiss us after that.
But if I disagree with the basic premise of what you're doing, then how will
What we're doing, what Gary is doing, is no different than any other form of art. All art is a drag act. Hell, maybe all art is a minstrel show, unless it's strictly autobiographical. How dare Tolstoy write Anna Karenina? How dare he get inside the head of a woman?
He didn't believe women were capable of intellectual thought, actually. He didn't think that
How
was something
dare
that we
he
could do.
try? How dare Sophocles write Antigone? How dare young men play her on stage long ago, or Juliet? How dare theater exist as it did for thousands of years? How dare Ibsen write a dollhouse? How dare Virginia Woolf get into the head of Septimus Smith as well as Mrs. Dalloway? Why don't we censor and ban everything except strictly autobiographical nonfiction? Let's eradicate novels. How dare anybody try to capture any part of the human experience they haven't lived personally themselves, huh? Let's stamp out every attempt at empathy and imagination in discovering human universals. Right, Kay?
I never said any of that. But writing is different from acting or vamping or whatever you call it.
I don't see the difference. If I write for a woman or a black person and the performer is from the group I'm writing for, I'm just using that performer as a ventriloquist's dummy, aren't I? For my white male minstrel show.
Obviously, it's complicated. When there's a history as distorted as the history of white people appropriating the voices of black people, that's a special situation.
Yeah, I don't know.
You disagree?
James Baldwin would disagree. He said everybody in America should be writing about racial stuff that makes us all uncomfortable. Everybody, black and white, should be taking risks. He wrote what he felt he had to write. He didn't want to think too much about the politics of what he should be writing. And when he tried to write really political novels, it hurt him. He started out with Go Tell It on a Mountain about a messed up poor family in Harlem. A black family, and black people got mad at him for washing out dirty laundry in public. Then he got confused. Then he confused everybody by writing Giovanni's Room. Right there in the 1950s, a black man writes a gay novel and all the characters are European and American white men? Nah. And the readers and the critics are all going, huh? He freaked them out. And then black writers went after his friend William Styron for writing The Confessions of Nat Turner. Baldwin said, hey, if you don't like Bill Styron's Nat Turner, go write your own.
So you're involved with literature also?
Yeah, try not to sound so surprised.
What I mean is, I didn't realize you were in academia.
I'm not. I'm a landscaper. I have about 1 year's worth of credits at a community college. That's as far as I got. But Kay has a lot of books on the shelves, and I browse around, and I've read some good stuff. I don't really go in for theory. That's more her thing, but maybe I do agree with her that a writer should be careful. They should think about what they're doing. When they write in the voice of somebody very different, maybe they should go and do it anyway, but they first should think about it long and hard. You know, they should be thinking extra careful when it's somebody from a group like women or people of color who have had their voices stolen in the past. Maybe that's all Kay is saying, is that you should think about what you're doing a little harder.
No, that's not what Kay is doing. Her mission in life is simple. Annihilate, immolate, eradicate, destroy. That's about as constructive as her criticism gets.
You know the movie that always makes me think of you, Eytan? The remake of The Stepford Wives. I use it in one of my courses. It's set in a universe that sees all women as a problem. In that film, you have women controlling entertainment, producing all the TV shows, and the shows all degrade men. And a humiliated man from a reality show that Nicole Kidman produces tries to kill her. And her husband, Matthew Broderick, tells her she deserves it, basically, and they move to Stepford. But the whole plot is reduced to a joke, and we're meant to sympathize with bitchy, arch characters we don't like at all. Or the movie can't decide if we should like them, and it can't decide if the Stepford Wives are robots or people with microchips in their brains. And we're told that gay relationships are just as likely to go in a Stepford Wives direction as straight ones, with the same power dynamics. And it seems that Christopher Walken is in charge, but then it turns out the real villainess is Glenn Close, of course, controlling everything, imposing the retro rules of Stepford on everyone else.
This was a bad film that nobody cares about. Why do you?
Because, of course, women are controlling monsters with tremendous power, and there's no need for feminism. It's a giggle and a joke. Like when I was a day camp counselor at 18, and a creepy guy was looking through a peephole into the adult women's changing room, and you thought it was such a joke. You asked if he was hot. You told me to flirt with him. And the Stepford Wives remake is a film that takes violence towards women exactly that seriously. And who made this film? It was produced by Scott Rudin, who's gay, and directed by Frank Oz, who thinks he knows women because he speaks in the voice of Miss Piggy, and was written by Paul Rudnick, who's gay and used to do a movie column in the voice of a woman. So I guess he knows all about women too. And I guess this group of powerful men didn't see the irony in creating a movie in which women have all the power and run the entire entertainment industry, and women invent male chauvinist oppression and impose it on themselves.
Didn't Paul Rudnick write Sister Act? That was sort of cute. Nuns are a fun kind of drag.
Carrie Fisher did the rewrite and redeemed it.
And whoa, why are you so violently anti-Frank Oz? Leave that poor man alone. He was wonderful as Miss Piggy and Yoda and Cookie Monster.
They said
like
in interviews when they did research for the film, these men were amazed to learn that there actually are hetero men who like to gather in groups and keep women out. They thought they discovered some wild aberration. They didn't see a political need for the Stepford Wives and how a serious form it shows the real situation of women.
Well, of course, because a woman wrote it. Or no, wait a minute. Wasn't it Ira Levin?
It was Ira Levin exploring something dark in heterosexual men in terms of how they relate to heterosexual women. Maybe playing on women's fear that if they're smart and interesting and talented, none of that matters to the men they're with, and the men would rather be with Barbie, a lot of them. But it's worth exploring, and kudos to Levin for doing it.
And also for exploring fears of giving birth to the spawn of Satan, like poor Rosemary. I hate when that happens.
So, as Curtis says, you can write about the other. You can get into the head of someone different if you think hard, if you understand the implications, if you're not a jerk about it. It's when thoughtless white males, gay or straight, appropriate the experiences of women or people of color and think that, what?
I'm just curious. Since you say it's ironic these men don't realize they're patriarchal male oppressors, do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound earnestly lecturing us about putting on a minstrel show and going on and on about the concerns of people of color and teaching African American studies in the first place? I mean, what are you but a big flaming drag act and a tap dancing buck and wing minstrel show with bells on?
You know, I really do think you need to take it easy here, man. You haven't read her books, you don't know anything about a paper or research or anything at all.
Don't worry. Kay's a feminist. She doesn't want a man protecting her. That's patronizing. She can fight her own battle.
There's no need to fight any battles. We can try to keep a civil discussion.
That's not what Kay wants, is it, Kay? She decided to bring it. She decided to throw down. So tell us, Kay, sweetheart, exactly what business you have talking about Langston and Zora, and what business did you have in high school lecturing me about Motown and Stax Records and how Michael Jackson put the black and white of rock and roll back together with his Thriller album? And please explain why you can't see yourself as the ridiculous, uptight, holier than thou hypocrite that you are.
I said things are complicated. They are. I teach about race and gender because different races and genders are tangled together in our country's history. I don't write or perform in the voice of a Black person.
But why even presume to teach gender studies when you hate men, and gay men especially?
Only some gay
Some
men.
personally, but by extrapolation, you hate all gay.
Only when I'm around you, Eytan. Only right now. Excuse me. I'm going to go lie down. The first panel I'm on is pretty early tomorrow morning, and I'll be presenting my jargon-filled bullshit minstrel show paper to an auditorium full of people tomorrow afternoon.
Kay exits.
As it happens, Kay's a hell of a good teacher and a writer.
Despite all the theory and the jargon.
Yes, I can't keep track of all the terminology, and I don't always want to, but she knows what she's saying, and she has good things to say. I learn a lot just talking things through with her.
Well, it's probably a matter of taste. I guess I'm not as inclined to sit at her feet and learn.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't like to see her mocked.
But if she can't stand the heat, she should get out of the kitchen. And oh yeah, she just did. But it's even simpler than that. If she can't take it, she shouldn't dish it out. Tell me, Curtis, is that your role here? To give your blessing and make it okay for her to teach courses about Black people?
My role is to be her husband and to protect her when people are beating up on her.
That's a laugh. She was the instigator every step, almost every step of the way. And I think we all know she can take care of herself.
She tries to seem that way. She tries to be tough, but she's actually pretty fragile.
Fragile, sure. As fragile as a Sherman tank, as fragile as the Kraken. Grrr.
She loves what she does and she's good at it. There's no need to mock her life work and make her feel like it's shit.
There's every need to do that when she's doing the same thing to Gary. He loves what he does too, and he's good at it. And I won't let him be mocked or pushed around.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Good night.
Curtis exits.
What? Was it something I said?
Lights down, end of scene 4. Lights come up on Kay, alone at the edge of the stage. She addresses the audience.
Before I became friends with Eytan, I had one good friend in school. She was a Black girl named Yvette Daniels. We were 12, 13 years old. It was a prissy New Jersey private school on the Palisades, and she was one of the token Black kids. There was one Black boy and one Black girl in every grade. It was good to hang out with Yvette because she hadn't gone to private schools all her life. She could be irreverent and funny. And she showed me there was something outside of the stale atmosphere of my mother's house and the stale atmosphere of my school. I could breathe around Yvette. I don't think she felt comfortable the few times I brought her home. I sure didn't feel comfortable in my home. Finally, she took me to her apartment in Englewood's 3rd Ward. I got to meet her mother, Claudine. Her mother was funnier, she was louder, she was more direct, and in a way more cool than Yvette. She put on old vinyl records on her turntable and turned it up till music poured out of her stereo speakers in waves of sound. She told us to listen. I remember the first time I came over, she put on Aretha Franklin's Lady Soul album. I'd never heard Aretha sing before. I'd never heard Chain of Fools or Natural Woman. She played Motown records for us. Yvette got bored sometimes listening to her mother talk and play music, but not me. Claudine gave me a sense of which songs Smokey Robinson wrote and which songs were by Holland Dozier Holland and how famous the Supremes were and how the Temptations had a vibe that was different from the Four Tops. I felt like I had escaped to another kingdom when I was with Claudine and I listened to her music. I felt I entered another world. It was music a deaf person would register. You could feel the vibrations, the beat of the drums, and the pulse of the bass line rising up from the floor into your body. I'd grown up in a house where we didn't play the radio, where my mother played classical music and opera. I'd never heard anything like it before. Claudine turned me on to music from the early 70s, to the Shylights and the Stylistics and the OJs. Drank in everything she played. I listened to her stories about growing up in Chicago, and I could feel a window open. I saw light. I saw a way out of the narrow life Mom had planned for me. Wouldn't be a banker like her. There is more to life than my GPA and getting the highest SAT score when the time came to take it. I was too damaged, maybe, I already suspected, to pursue music or art myself, but there was this rich music to listen to. There was this rich, amazing culture to explore, raw and visceral, vibrating with life. The way the floor and the table and the chairs in that apartment vibrated with music. And Yvette and I, we drifted apart. Maybe she sensed that I found her mom cooler than her, that Claudine gave me something I'd never had. Warm laughter and somebody I could talk to and hang with, who fed me good food and ideas I was hungry for. Maybe Yvette resented my interest in Black culture. Who knows? Maybe she saw me as a cultural tourist. I didn't want to go to the mall with her or the movies anymore. I just wanted to hang out with her mom. And the time came when we just stopped seeing each other. But the need for rock and roll and R&B and jazz, soul and gospel, hell, every form of music invented in the Americas comes out of Black culture in some way. That stayed with me. And I discovered books by African-American authors. Some books were text, like those old songs that seemed to vibrate when I touched them. And I began to invent myself. I began to set myself free.
At Rise, Act 2, Scene 1, at Rise, Gary is cleaning up the living room after the meal we saw the night before. Eytan enters sleepy in a bathrobe and watches him.
Morning.
Morning.
How long have you been up?
Yeah, a while.
Do we still have guests?
Not right now.
Drove them away?
Please stop sounding so hopeful. They both went out. Curtis drove Kay to a hotel where her conference is.
Is he coming back?
I think he's going to drive around most of the day. He said he wanted to check out the Powell Gardens and architecture, some buildings he read about. Then he's going to go hear Kay give her paper at the hotel. We're invited, despite of everything.
Oh, what time?
4 in the afternoon.
Oh, darn. I'll be washing my hair at the time.
In all honesty, I don't really want to go either. I'm a bad brother. I'm not asking for a copy of that book of hers on whatever.
Fanny Hurst.
Oh, no, I didn't even ask Kay about it. Her other books. I don't even know if she has other books.
Google her.
I don't think I can read them. I'm a bad brother.
Oh, well. Is she still feeling sorry for herself?
I couldn't tell how she was feeling. We talked about her paper a little.
On Mulebone.
Apparently, it's not a very good play.
All the more reason to write papers about it.
Or it's interesting and full of quaint folkloric touches and amusing local color, but it needed more work and it's aging badly. And she added a lot of qualifiers. I wasn't really paying attention. Kay asked me to tell you.
Yes.
That she's sorry for last night. She thinks it was her fault. She did start the fight. She was too critical of our song and she doesn't know enough about drag to comment on it.
All of this is true.
She said she'd like to come along tonight to the bar to hear me perform.
Oh, no.
I think it's a nice gesture. She's trying.
Well, as long as we don't have to go hear the talk on Mulebone.
I think she'd like us to come, but there's no quid pro quo.
Then I can handle her coming tonight. They're leaving tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. And she'll have Curtis there, when she gives her paper.
I wonder if she's ever written a paper on the topic of the magical Negro.
The magical... What?
Well, yes, because in a sense, she's married to one.
You lost me, babe.
I don't know that he's got any supernatural powers, and I think magical Negro guys usually hang out with white men, not white women, but It's not all that far removed from Mammy. It's a black person who lives for white people. Simple, pure at heart, close to the land. Takes care of the white people, worries about their problems, doesn't really have a life of his own, no dreams, no goals, no.
We don't know any of that about Curtis. I think he's good for her. He's a calming influence and he supports her.
Exactly.
I'm glad to see Kay in a good relationship. I think she's had some rough years, some lonely years.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah, I like him.
I'll be glad to be shut of the two of them.
I've got to find a moment to talk to Kay alone about financial stuff.
You owe her nothing. You're a poor school teacher.
She's a poor college teacher.
Tenure track.
That's still not security, and half the money belongs to her.
No! Your mother left it to you, and you earned it, putting up with wretchedness and horror while Kay was larking around out of the picture.
I wish there was a way I could convince Kay that Mom wanted her to have half the money.
She didn't, and there isn't.
The lawyers say that Kay and I have to work together to pull this transfer off.
I completely disapprove.
I know.
I was thinking about how she and I used to torture you. We'd promise to take you with us to the movies or the mall and snub you just to see your startled face, just to make you cry. Or that time we locked you in her closet and made you say humiliating things about yourself.
I'm a worm, I'm an insect, I'm a slime mold, I'm a garden slug. I'm pond scum, I'm lower than excrement.
You still remember.
Mm-hmm.
And you say it in that calm voice.
Hey, it got me out of the closet. In a sense.
Well, I wasn't out of mine yet.
Oh no.
Entirely. But why are you with me when I was that much of a shit to you? And why are you still trying to have a relationship with a sister like Kay?
You're not those teenagers anymore. I've moved on, and I figure you have also.
You know that I'm the reason for her outburst last night, don't you?
Mhm.
The primal source of her rage. I'm her evil twin who didn't work out as a life partner. The gay man who rejected her as Langston rejected Zora or whatever nonsense. The boy who infuriated her by finally coming out and being who I was, who she always knew deep down I was. And so now she hates all gay men, you included, and there's no way to reach her. Not that she's worth reaching.
Well, maybe it does seem like you guys have a lot of issues.
Oh yeah? Really? You think so?
So in some sense, I guess neither of you really has moved on.
Worm.
Mm.
Sect. Did Curtis really say he'd be gone all day?
For the next few hours at least.
Let's fuck out here. Maybe they'll walk in on us. Kay'll be outraged. She's a member of the Anti-Sex League. She wants to eradicate the orgasm.
You know, Eytan, I always feel like living room sex is great in theory, but really kind of uncomfortable in practice.
Along with sex in the shower, outdoor sex.
Pretty much. Yeah. I'm big on beds. Beds are wonderful for sex. It's like they're made for it.
Well, let's go do it in the guest room then. I'm walking on that.
I really don't want to jizz on their things or whatever other fucking shit you've got in mind. Sorry.
Such a gentleman. Fine. See you in our room.
See you there, Bubba.
He exits. They exit. Lights down. End of scene 1. Act 2, scene 2. Kay, near the end of the stage, is holding her notes. She's in the midst of presenting her paper on mulebone. The audience is now, to her, an auditorium full of academics that she's addressing.
Indeed, in the writings of Hurston and Langston Hughes, we encounter that double consciousness Du Bois spoke of, the crisis of representation, the fragmentation of identity, and occasionally of narrative, the deliberate blurring of the lines between high and low culture, as well as a critique of the rigid dichotomies of dualism and binaryism, and a defined embrace of the many narratives over the prevailing normative meta-narratives of white society. Both Hughes and Hurston felt caught between various worlds, and both were, in a sense, self-created. Hughes was raised by his grandmother and her friends. his mother in and out of his life, his father a stranger. When Hurston was 13, she lost a loving mother and was cast aside by an indifferent father. And each of these writers was culturally as well as emotionally orphaned. Hurston's childhood in the all-Black town of Eatonville spared her the dangers and indignities of the Jim Crow South that loomed outside it. Hughes grew up close to white friends in his Cleveland high school. As with Hurston, his fellowship with working-class people of color was a deliberate choice. When Hurston first toured the South, gathering anthropological information on the culture, few accepted her. Even when she returned to Eatonville, she was in some sense cast in the role of colonist observer and tourist, if not missionary, for the larger white society of commerce and academia. During later trips, she explained away her car and store-bought clothes as the spoils of bootlegging, and worked in the fields with those she interviewed, and trained in the art of hoodoo with famous conjurers in New Orleans. She embraced a reflexive immersion as she commingled scholarship with the search for identity. Similarly, as she and Hughes collaborated on Mule Bone, they adhered to the ideals he delineated in his essay, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain. They sought to be playful, irreverent, and defiantly lowbrow instead of uplifting, to create a dramatic art that felt like Bessie Smith singing the blues. They were tired of white scripts for Black actors and tired of minstrel shows. And yet, they were and were not the people they wished to represent on stage, else Hurston's conscious immersion in such communities during her research trips would not have been necessary. The other crucial paradox for them in terms of identity was their relationship with the white godmother. Charlotte Manson nurtured their talent and poisoned them with condescending theories about Negro primitivism and how it could renew the arid civilization of whites. In the intersection of Hurston and Hughes' orphaned cultural sense of self, compounded by their orphaned sense of self in terms of actual family, we may find the source of the tension that drove them apart. As they competed for Godmother's approval and wrestled with the contradictions of their shared artistic vision. Hurston may have been more cynical about the foolish old woman, and yet her need for the love of Godmother beyond issues of economic necessity may have been as real as his. Hughes maintained a childlike identity and had felt crushed when he was saved in church as a boy, but did not literally see and meet Christ as a kind of parent and imaginary friend. Later, he stayed with his father in Mexico and found an unlovable man with no love to give. Hughes, who received affirmation from neither biological parent, was the one who clung to the maternal aspect of Godmother most desperately, and Hughes suffered most deeply even as his collaboration and friendship with Hurston found her. He writes in his autobiography, The Big C, about the horror and anguish of his final conversations with Godmother in her big, bright drawing room on Park Avenue. As he was banished and stumbled into the elevator and the street, physical illness followed, and acrimonious exchanges with Hurston involving a theater company that hoped to produce Mule Bone in that year of 1931. Hughes writes, that spring for me, and I guess all of us, was the end of the Harlem Renaissance. We were no longer in vogue, we Negroes. Sophisticated New Yorkers turned to Noel Coward. Colored actors began to go hungry, publishers politely rejected new manuscripts, and patrons found other uses for their money. Clearly, for Hughes, the opportunity to present an authentic, joyous representation of the Black experience on stage was slipping away.
Lights down. End of scene 2. Scene 3. Lights up in the guest room. Curtis paces around and speaks to Kay, who is in the guest bathroom.
Baby, I'm serious. Let's find you a doctor. Maybe there's someone at the hotel working with the conference. We can get you just checked out. Flying is dangerous. People pick up bugs in airports and airplanes all the time.
It's not a bug, it's nerves. It's flying out here and giving the paper and staying in this house and everything else. I don't think I'm gonna throw up. I'd like to hang out with this toilet and sink close by, just in case.
And you stay there as long as you like. Do you need your insulin?
No, I'm good.
You want me to run out and get you a Diet Coke
Why?
to settle your stomach?
That seems to be your favorite home remedy for everything.
That's what my mom's believed in. I mean, somebody felt sick. She poured this stuff called Coca-Cola syrup all over ice. She tucked me up in bed to give me a glass. And a lot of the time, it worked. And so for me now, Coke is the magical stuff, like chicken soup.
Well, thank you for taking care of me the way your mother took care of you. It's bizarre, well, actually having someone nurture me like this. I guess I tell you that a lot, but it's because the novelty hasn't worn off.
That's what I'm here for.
I know. It's kind of surreal. Makes a lot of the bad stuff go away.
Good. But if you want, we can move to the hotel.
No. We're fine here for one more night.
And we do not have to go to this performance of your brothers. I mean, it's not really our thing, and they didn't come to your paper. You don't feel well, so fuck 'em.
If I'd listened to you and not shot my mouth off last night, that might have been an option. As it is, I think we need to go.
You think you hurt Gary's feelings?
Well, that, and so I can prove that I'm not the closed-minded bigot Eytan says I am. Even if I am, I'd like to generate evidence to the contrary.
You spend a lot of energy worrying about that guy.
When I'm under this roof.
No, everywhere. I think he really damaged you.
He thinks he's a bigger source of damage in my life than he is. Other people got there first. I think he has it in for you. He's sizing you up, looking for weak spots, looking for a way to go after you.
Well, I'm not exactly warming up to him either, so I'll give him a fight if he wants one.
I can't tell if he's just angry at you for being the man he wasn't. You know, he told me in high school that I'd wind up as a mad old woman in a house full of cats. He thought it was so ironic that my mother and I didn't get along. He said we were interchangeable, and every day he could see me turning into her. Since he couldn't bring himself to be attracted to me, it had to be my fault. I had to be intrinsically repulsive and prematurely withered. No man could want me. So it's either that or else he thinks you're hot.
Uh-oh. I hope it's option number one then.
I don't mean he's hot for you himself, necessarily. I mean, if he thinks I've somehow won and wound up with a better life than he has, that could make him want to tear you down. Maybe he resents you because you take care of me in a way he expects Gary to do for him because he is as difficult a diva as I am. And like I said, he's very competitive. Or he could have some deep-seated racist feelings I wasn't aware of before, or some feelings about interracial couples.
Or he could just be an asshole.
Yes, I suppose that's always a possibility. All right, so we're eating at the bar?
Yeah. Gary said it's a dinner theater kind of layout and the food is decent, so.
Well, I'm sure they've got Diet Coke there.
You know what? I'm gonna go out and get a bottle right now from that wall fridge full of sodas at the dumpling place. And if you still feel this lousy an hour from now, we're just not going. I'm gonna tuck you up in bed for real.
Okay, sweetie. Thank you.
Eytan knocks on the door.
Hey, how did your paper go?
On the other hand, maybe I'll stick around here.
No, sweetie, really, would you go and get me that soda? I think it would do me some good.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Be right back.
He exits.
You're not feeling well?
No, I'm not feeling well.
I'm sorry to hear it.
I'll bet.
I just came to tell you that Gary would like to talk to you. Maybe outside. We have a backyard we share with the people upstairs in the duplex.
Why does Gary want to talk to me in your backyard?
I guess he didn't know that Curtis was going out, and it's kind of private out there, away from me and everyone else.
What does he want to talk about?
I guess he'll tell you. He probably would resent me offering an opinion on these things.
Did he tell you to call me?
No, he'll be heading in here soon. I preempted him.
Well then, go for broke. Say whatever asinine thing it is you want to say.
You're not entitled to any of his money. The inheritance.
I know that.
He's going to try to be noble and try to offer you half. I just want to say that I find that revolting and unjust. To Gary.
I agree. Is that all?
That's all.
Good. Get out. And tell him I'll meet him in the backyard.
Well, don't take too long. He has to get to the bar ahead of the rest of us.
To transform himself.
Exactly.
Lights down, end of scene 3. Scene 4. Lights come up on Curtis. He's alone at the edge of the stage, addressing the audience.
I first met Sakiko when I was 25. I was working in a tree nursery in Chicago. She was 19. She had been in the US for 2 weeks. She barely spoke English. We met in a club, and I was really into anime at the time, and Japanese manga titles were hard to find in comic book stores. I blitzed her with questions about otaku culture and my favorite manga artists and the films of Miyazaki and super flat stuff by Makashi Murakami. She couldn't tell me anything. She wasn't into any of it. I was trying out some phrases in Japanese that I got from, the world and Godzilla films, and she was trying out her high school English on me, giggling with a friend. But she gave me a number and we started dating. And I think for her, at first, it was all about defying her family. She had been brought up as this rich, spoiled girl in Kyoto, very brico, very childlike, with the Mickey Mouse pencil case and the Hello Kitty lunchbox. Grown women who talk baby talk and act like little girls, but she hated the father, her Tosan, and he was this cold, controlling businessman. And she wanted to upset him as much as possible. Coming to America and dating a black guy seemed like the way. She expected me to be a badass, I think. She was amazed that I'm so soft-hearted. She projected all this stuff onto me, and it was pretty much that shallow for me too, at the start. Sakiko was cute, this pretty Japanese girl with big wide eyes like in an anime drawing. I just liked the way she talked. Then you get in a relationship with somebody, and no matter how superficial it is to begin with, you're gonna find out something more. You see layers. You start to see the whole person. I think it surprised me because I'd never gotten serious with anybody before. And it surprised her. I wasn't just this adolescent rebellion. I was a man. And yeah, I was still the other, as Kay would say. I was a window into American culture, and she was my window into Japan, even though I've still never been there. By the time we got married, she actually hoped she could talk with folks into flying over. She was proud of us as a couple, and she wanted her Tosan to meet me. On some level, which is so sad, she wanted his approval. That's all she ever wanted. She tried to act tough. She smoked to upset him. She used crude language to upset him. She got an irizumi, a tattoo, and messed up her high school exams to upset him. But all she was doing was trying to get the man's attention. Anyhow, her folks wouldn't fly over. Even if we had gone there to have the ceremony, they wouldn't have attended. Once they couldn't talk her out of the marriage, they just stopped talking. By phone or email. Her Kasan just did whatever her Tosan said, so we had a small wedding at my mom's church, and my Uncle Jeff gave Sakiko away. She and my family got along pretty good. She was learning English. I went to work for a landscaper, and I was thinking about starting my own company. And 2 years into the marriage, she found the lump. And it happened quick. And she didn't have citizenship yet, and me taking out loans and trying to pay for the medical treatments. And her so scared, contacting relatives in Japan, telling them what was going on, me trying to contact her people and begging them to help or at least speak with her in my lousy 50 words of Japanese. Holding her through the night with the cancer eating her up inside, wishing I could heal her, wishing I could save her, wishing I could push in a Tosan's smug Shibui face because I couldn't see the difference between him and the cancer. I felt like he had done this to her, like he was what was eating her up inside. He was a tumor, it's growing, the cancer seeking through the blood in her veins, attacking every system. And in the end, she's lying there in a hospital bed on a morphine drip, and I couldn't even hold her hand the way I wanted to with an IV line and all the stuff going into her. My wife, the person who knew me best, the person who I knew best, and I was useless. I could nurse a tree and a garden back to life. I could raise an abandoned baby squirrel and help it go back into the wild. But I couldn't protect her. I couldn't save her. It was like an open wound for years. The lack of her and my inadequacy and how I failed on her. Some people turn on a dime, they start a new relationship. I could not go to clubs. I could not try to meet people online. Everyone else had abandoned Sakiko. I was going to be true to her. And then Kay contacted me about roses in her yard that wouldn't grow. There was no way for them to grow. In the shadow of the house, they were not getting their 6 hours a day of sun. I dug them up and moved them. I helped her with a diplodium blight on her evergreen shrubs. She invited me in for coffee, and I talked to Blue Street, trying to impress me about African-American authors I've never read, some I've never heard of, talking semiotics and signs and signifiers. And I thought it was cute and a little sad. It reminded me of me and Sakiko that first night in the bar, projecting weird shit on each other. So once I had her yard in shape, I called her and asked her out to dinner. And it's been good. I don't feel like I've betrayed Sakiko because there are echoes of me and Sakiko all over our relationship. I mean, it's different. We're different people. But I think my first wife, wherever she is, must know that I'm still honoring her memory every day. And sometimes it feels like I'm still trying to save her. Kay has her health challenges, and she's got this pain and anger burning her up, just like Sakiko. I can't save her. I can't save anybody. But I can soothe her. And it closes that wound in me to try to close some of hers. I can help her with the ache. I can make it better. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the basic dynamic of our marriage.
Lights down. End of scene 4. Scene 5. Lights up on Gary and Kay, who are out in the backyard.
Hey, Gary?
Hey, it's Buggy. I'm here. Did you want to go in for some bug spray?
No, we can probably wrap this up pretty quickly.
Okay. I was hoping to have a real quick talk with you. I mean, while you're in town.
I'm happy to talk, but I don't want the money. Mom didn't leave it to me. She left it to you. You deserve it. You were there for her, so screw it. End of discussion.
There were years she shut me out and we didn't talk at all. It's entirely random that she allowed me back into her life at the end. And her mind really wasn't in great shape those last few years. And as executor of her estate, I get to decide.
Gary, it's yours. It was hers, and now it's yours.
As executor and as your brother, I want you to have half. Just hold on, let me come inside real quick. Okay. Look, there's a straightforward legal way to do it. She both catches into it, so it's tricky. So if you'll work with me, I think we can get this thing sorted out.
But I won't. I'm doing well, and so is Curtis. We don't need your charity.
It's not charity, it's justice, and it's family, Kay. It's family. I would like to be family with you.
That's not something you should pay for.
I feel it's like one of the reasons for our attention and the space between us.
They existed long before Mom kicked off and I heard the details of her will. I've always been a lousy sister to you, and you never resented me for it properly, and it's ridiculous for you to offer me money that belongs to you to try to make up for what I lack.
Well, then what's the answer here? We go back to not speaking for years and years? We just count our losses and give up?
I agreed to stay here. I contacted you when we were heading into town, and I said yes when you offered to put me up. I wanted to try. I knew you wanted to be close. It's a sweet impulse. You're a nice guy. I thought I'd try to be a good sister. When I view things from a distance, I think it'd be nice to have a family also.
But when you view things up close...
I'm still not very good at it. And I think the whole Eytan situation makes things impossible.
Obviously, that's going to take time.
Time is not going to do a damn thing. We're poison to each other. I'm glad you found someone you like. God bless. But aside from his toxic personality, I guess it's creepy for me and somehow incestuous to find you shacked up with this ghost from my past, this horrible adolescent phase that I went through, like acne, and I just can't get past it. I'm guessing he feels the same way.
Your trip isn't going the way I'd hoped.
It's not going to get better. I mean, we're coming tonight. I said I would.
You don't have to.
I'm not just going because I'm your sister. Eytan may be right. I teach gender studies. You want to show me a different side of drag. I'm willing to learn. And again, I salute you as a lovely human being from a distance. And the distance, I don't think I am ever.
Well, it doesn't have to happen all at once on one trip. Think about it. And think about the money.
Gary, I am being as clear and consistent as I know how. I don't know what more I can do.
Don't be consistent. Be flexible, be impulsive, keep an open mind about everything. I've got to head to the bar now.
Good luck.
Don't wish me luck, it's bad luck.
Break a leg. Break a stereotype.
Oh, don't be like that. Tell me to break an eyelash. Break a false eyelash.
Gary. Break a false eyelash?
Thank you. It means a lot coming from you.
I know you're going to be fabulous.
Thanks. I better get going.
Gary exits.
Oh, God. One more night.
Curtis enters. He brings her the Diet Coke.
Hey, I got it for you. I guess Gary's heading out to the bar.
Yeah.
You cold?
No, it's just the bugs. I mean, I've got a little chill running through me, but it's psychosomatic.
You want to head back into the house?
I'd get more psychosomatic in the house, with emphasis on the psycho. This will be really good. The soda will make me feel better. Thank you, baby.
Yeah, my mother knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
So, what did you and Gary talk about?
He wants to give me half the money he inherited. I said no. We're doing okay. He wants a close, wonderful sister-brother relationship. I told him it sounds nice, but I don't think I can do it. I've been thinking about encounters that I've had with him, when I was in high school and he wasn't even in junior high yet. encounters me and Eytan had with him. Mostly, I ignored him. I left him to Margarita. I wonder if he's still in touch with her. But most of the interactions I had with my brother before college were with Eytan. Gary would tag along. He'd want us to include him. And there was this one time we told him he could hang with us if he could be in my room if he acted out this scenario. Eytan and I were in this honors English class on Russian literature. They had courses like that at the academy. But the teacher, Mr. Phipps, this toadying middle-aged man, was an asshole. He saw himself as this revolutionary nonconformist, but he ruined these great books for us. He ruined Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground and The Devils, that one especially. He taught it as if Dostoevsky approved of the anarchist young people in the book, And Dostoevsky wrote it after he had a nervous breakdown and got religion. He was right-wing. He was satirizing the characters. He was condemning them, and that never came up in class. There's one older character who thought he was such a revolutionary. He thought the government was after him, and he lived out in the provinces. No one could care less about him. And this silly old character, he wrote this opera. He thought he was so bold, with all these people chasing death because they wanted to die, and a mineral bursts into song. It's a parody. It was awful, but Phipps didn't seem to get that. He took this character seriously. And all the young people, all the young characters who just prefigured the mindless violence of the coming Russian Revolution, who were just empty nihilists. Phipps was talking and writing about the book as if Dostoevsky wanted the reader to admire them. And so when we were, writing our Bonnie and Clyde rock opera, Eytan told Gary that he had to play the role of Phipps, and we'd take the school hostage. This was before there was so much violence in schools. You could joke about that stuff. And we would become the devils and go all nihilist on his ass and see how he liked it. And we tied Gary to a chair in my room.
With what?
I don't know, with like the terry cloth belt to my bathrobe, probably.
Okay, it was just starting to sound a little intense.
It actually was intense. We were trying to humiliate him. We were trying to scare the crap out of him so he would quit bothering us. Once he was tied up, Eytan was in his face, yelling at him, asking him what it was like to be an English teacher who got paid every day to come in and ruin great literature for rooms full of kids. Splashed a glass of water in Gary's face. He was pulling on his ear. He grabbed Gary by the hair and pulled his head back so he'd look Eytan in the eye as he stood over him, shouting insults. And Gary, my brother, can be so passive, so mild. He just absorbs this kind of stuff. It rolls off him. I mean, he was probably scared, but he'd heard us talking about Phipps and imitating him. And so he started using all these Phipps catchphrases and vocal mannerisms. He starts generating dialogue with Eytan for our play, which is supposedly what we were after. And Eytan and I, we would try to do improv. I'm no good. I can't do that. But something in the room shifted. And it was like one moment, Eytan and I were doing terrible things to my kid brother. And the next minute, they were doing improv while I stood on the sidelines and watched. We're 17. Gary was 12.
So that's how they first connected.
No. That was the end of the term. Eytan's family took him back to Israel for the summer right after that. Eytan and me, we maybe talked about how my brother had flipped the script on us when we were messing with him, but we never talked about that moment. The moment that I thought had happened between them. And Eytan and I kept fighting senior year. We didn't spend as much time together. I don't think there was any more contact between them until the last few years. Forgotten about that thing with Gary playing fips until this trip. And I guess what unnerved me is I couldn't do improv with Eytan. I couldn't really collaborate the way he wanted. I couldn't write lyrics. I told myself I was damaged by my mother and that's why I'm not creative, but maybe Eytan's right. Maybe I'm just this dry, unimaginative, closed off woman like my mother.
You're incredibly creative. You're a good writer.
I write about texts.
That's creative.
I deconstruct texts. I can't construct them.
Do not let him get to you.
Even when I'm analyzing and dissecting a text, I don't get it right. There were 1,000 things wrong with that paper today. Not just the jargon that Eytan laughs at. I didn't talk about Zora implied to Godmother that Langston and Louise were involved, thinking that Godmother would fire Louise. But instead, Godmother also reacted like a jilted lover. She turned on Langston in a fury, and Zora didn't dare in the midst of the depression to defend him. That's important. All the gossip in the background was important. Maybe I should have spelled that out.
You gave them context. Everybody got what you were saying.
And maybe my whole point about the link between their search for cultural identity and competing for Godmother as a parent figure, it's forced. It was just a load of cerebral nonsense. And
You did good. I was proud of you.
Well, it's over. Anyway, one more panel tomorrow. I can practically sleepwalk my way through, and then we get on a plane and get out of here.
It'll be good to get home.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys having any second thoughts about going?
No? We're psyched. Whenever you say we should head out.
Okay. Is it okay if we go in your rental car? Gary took ours. It's less than a couple miles away.
Sounds good. Just give me directions.
It seemed I had a new man every day. I hit my knees, but it was not to pray. But then you filled my life with love that didn't come with sleaze. Lord, you gave me a new reason to get down on my knees. I've known men in the bathroom of a bar, or in the bushes right behind my car. Now I may catch a glimpse of grace instead of some disease. Lord, you gave me a new reason to get down on my knees. You're all I know, and I won't stray again. Now all I blow are new chances to sin. Yes, you're the one who really takes me there. I yield to you now as I kneel in prayer. I'm going down to be raised up. It's you I want to please. Lord, you gave me a new reason to get down on my knees. Yes, you gave me a new reason to get down on my knees.
Thank you. Channel, if I may, the late great Tammy Wynette. Tammy sang a lot of songs back in the 70s when Maribel Morgan had a book out about the total woman. She told housewives how to make their marriage come alive. And Tammy sang songs about just that, about how it was okay to enjoy sex, even for a good Christian woman. And it was okay, it was holy even to try some kinky things if it helped a woman keep her husband, if it meant she could stand by her man, if it meant she could avoid a divorce. But there's one kind of loving that Tammy never sang about until she spoke through me.
I'm not a whore, but I let him use the back door. If it keeps a marriage strong, it's not a sin. No, it's no chore when I let him use the back door. It's just another way to let love in. Well, I stand by my man, try to love him the best I can. I try to swing the way that he's swinging. And his good girl's gonna go bad if that's what makes him glad. Whatever part of me where he's clinging. And when he loves me late at night, it's all wrong, but it's all right. I'm not a whore, but I let him use the back door. If it keeps a marriage strong, it's not a sin. I know the score, so I let him use the back door. It's just another way to let love in. I don't get sore, I just pour on KY jelly. Some wives live their lives on their backs, I spend mine on my belly. I'm not a whore, everybody, but I let him use the back door. If it keeps some marriage strong, it's not a sin. That's not what it's for, but I let him use the back door. It's just another way to let love in. It's just another way to let love in.
Lights down. End of scene 6. Scene 7. Gary goes for the lights.
All right, I got the lights. Okay, cool. I won't be 1 minute. I'm gonna go change and finish taking off my makeup, and then I want to hear what you guys thought about the act in detail.
And we can give you all the behind-the-scenes dirt.
If some of those women were guys, I find that downright disturbing.
Why?
Because they were so damn beautiful.
Did you find that disturbing, Kay?
Not really.
No one there struck you as beautiful.
It's not my aesthetic.
Those two blondes who sang the duet, they're both guys?
One's a guy, one's in transition.
Damn.
We take no blame for the Valkyrie.
Yeah, I didn't really get what he was doing.
It would be all right if she could sing. She thinks she's being intentionally funny, but she's not quite in on the joke, especially when she's had a few.
Yeah, that was one drunken Valkyrie.
So what did you think of our songs, Kay? Be honest.
Yours were definitely the best ones, the best original songs.
All perfect rhymes, did you notice? Eytan's a stickler for that.
Well, some daring rhymes here and there, and a lot of internal rhymes. Too many in places.
They were well-crafted songs.
Okay. So do you see what we're doing in a different way now?
I see that it gives you a lot of pleasure. I think you're both lucky to have something like this that you share.
Well, she sounds awfully diplomatic.
It was fine. It was interesting. It was tuneful. It's not my thing, but that's okay.
But are we women hating monsters because we're involved in this?
I don't think Gary really hates anybody. He's anger challenged.
Hey.
And you? Gotta be you.
That's nice. And Curtis, what's your verdict?
It was interesting. Like Kay said, you had the best songs that weren't cover tunes, hands down. And I actually thought I liked a lot of your stuff. I thought it was very funny. I just
What?
every song in your set, it seemed like you had to take a swipe at Christians in the song or in the patter or in both.
Were you raised in the church?
I was brought up the Baptist church, yes.
Really? Well, it's a funny thing, but if you're a committed religious Baptist, you probably shouldn't go to gay bars with drag queen entertainers. You might hear and see things you find offensive.
I'm not bothered by all of that. I'm not religious. I told you about my favorite author I found on Kay's shelf is James Baldwin. I'm just saying, people in my family, my moms, her sisters, and my gran, they felt very seriously about the things you turned into punchlines. You were making a joke out of good Christian women, and I've known few too many to laugh.
Well, I tend to feel that we have a license to make fun of those who hate us and pass laws against us.
The women in my family, they were like what Kay said about Gary here. They didn't know how to hate anybody. They were as loving and as gentle as anybody could be, and that was part of their faith.
Oh, they hated the sin, not the sinner.
There were maybe things that puzzled them, things they knew nothing about, things they didn't understand, but they wouldn't get up in anybody's face about sin or anything else. Only if somebody came after their own, after one of their kids, then you saw how strong they were. And fierce. That was the only time.
But given the way Baptists and most religious Christians behave in the larger American society, can you understand why I do not give a rat's ass if our songs offended them?
I just think it's one more thing you ought to be careful about. Like what we said last night, maybe you need to be even more careful with faith than race and gender, because it's different.
Not for me. I'm a Jew, and nobody knows what the fuck that means. It's not a gender. It could be a race. It's supposed to be a religion, except that I don't practice it and I don't believe in it. And lots of rabbis would spit on me for being who I am. So how am I a Jew? And of course, I'm still a Jew. So go figure.
Well, I don't know about all of that. But maybe you do need to think, if you wrote those songs about a group you're not a part of, really think hard before you denigrate a whole different set of people. People out in the heartland who like country music, like what Katie was saying last night about your Idaho song, or Black people of faith, because some of your songs have a touch of gospel to them, frankly. Maybe you should stay away from people you find or know nothing about. Write more about what you know.
Oh, but isn't that what Jews always do? We have no authenticity. We have no originality and passion and artistry. We can only appropriate and imitate. Well, that's what Wagner wrote in his essay of 1850 because he was jealous of Meyerbeer's success. And maybe Wagner was overcompensating. He might have been he was afraid he might be the illegitimate son of a Jew. But people say it over and over again throughout the 20th century. The Jews take over other people's music. They don't belong anywhere. They insert themselves in the narrative. All those minstrel shows you talk about, Kay.
Well, yes. Al Jolson was
Al
actually...
Jolson was Jewish, I know. I've seen The Jazz Singer, and I don't mean the Neil Diamond version, though. Unfortunately, I've seen that too. And it wasn't just Jolson. It was George Burns before he met Gracie. It was Fanny Brice. It was Sophie Tucker for years, starting as a teenager because they thought she was too fat and ugly to get on stage and sing unless she was blacked up. And then look at the Jews writing the songs. Gershwin writing Swanee, Irving Berlin writing Blue Skies, or Irving Berlin bringing ragtime into the mainstream with Alexander's Ragtime Band. They said he had a quote unquote little colored boy who lived in a cabinet who wrote his songs for him, because how else could he be ragging his tunes? How else could the songs be syncopated? People saw Jews as existing somewhere between whites and blacks. They weren't seen as quite human. There were plenty of country clubs and colleges that didn't want them, but hey, they must have been exploiting blacks anyhow. They must have been in control. And if they tried to be progressive, if they wrote shows for African Americans, well, too bad it was still racist in the end. If Kern and Hammerstein wrote Showboat, based on a novel by Edna Thurber, it was still an offense. Or if the Gershwins wrote Porgy and Bess, we still have to bring in a lot of African-American writers to kosher it and fix it. We have to apologize for it when we revive it. Just like it's an embarrassment how Jews founded the NAACP. And I'll bet some of those Negrotarians you were telling us about, Kay, I bet they were Jewish.
They were.
And as ridiculous as they may have been, was Fanny Hurst Jewish?
She was, from a self-hating German Jewish family. Her mother always warned her not to marry a kike. She used to hate it, and she was growing up when her family met new people and her mother told them the Hursts were Jewish. So the black daughter in Imitation of Life who's trying to pass, she might be a metaphor for Hearst herself.
Well, there you go. But still, we should condemn Hearst for writing it. We should see her as a racist above all else.
Well, Zora always felt that Fanny Hurst liked to be seen in public with her because she made Hearst seem white. But I wouldn't say above all else.
Oh, no. Whatever kind of progressive shows Jews write, they're really creating racist caricatures. When Rogers and Hammerstein tried to present Asians as people in South Pacific, or The King and I, or Flower Drum Song, it was laughable. It was racist.
Well, yeah, it was a little.
Yeah, to be fair, Eytan, I mean, that one girl in South Pacific can't talk English. She doesn't get to sing, and all she does get to do is sit there, frame her face with her hands, and symbolize happy talk.
And reinforce the Madame Butterfly myth. She gets to do that too.
Yeah, and didn't they ban King and I in Thailand, and they had to bring in David Henry Wong to spruce up Flower Drum Song because it was racist.
Sure, apologize for it. Ignore what they were trying to do. Ignore how brave and rare it was when they did it. Or Leonard Bernstein, Stephen Sondheim, Arthur Lawrence, and Jerome Robbins. 4 Jewish gay boys. They wanted to turn Romeo and Juliet into a Jewish Catholic romance on the Lower East Side and call it East Side Story. And then they decided to make it about Puerto Rico immigrants and Hell's Kitchen and call it West Side Story. And to this day, you've got people blasting them for it and saying they stereotype Latinos, as if the Sharks were any worse than the Jets, as if they weren't writing about the absurdity of bigotry and identifying with the immigrants themselves, as if they weren't writing about themselves as persecuted little gay Jews when they wrote the song Somewhere.
There's a place for us.
I'm just saying.
Somewhere a place.
I'm
Okay.
just saying. Why shouldn't the people who tried to give African Americans and Asians and Latinos their first voice, their first complex characters and relationships in theater ever, why shouldn't they be asked to apologize for it? What business did they have writing anything outside of Fiddler on the Roof? When everything they touched was a minstrel show, because when Rogers and Hammerstein wrote about farmers and cowboys in Oklahoma, it was just as exotic for them as a king in Siam, or when Hammerstein created Carmen Jones for Belafonte and Dorothy Dandridge. So shame on vaudeville and everything that came after it. Shame on the Jews for inventing the Broadway musical, because that's what they did. Them and a few gay men like Cole Porter, and of course a lot of the Jews were gay, 2% of 2% of the population. Hart and Sondheim and Bernstein and Jerry Herman and Candor and Ebb. Shame on them for writing the Great American Songbook and so many shows that seem as American as apple pie. Just like Jews invented all the superheroes. But really, it was all inauthentic. It was all appropriation.
It sounds like you got some issues here, Eytan.
You think?
There a point? Are you just venting at Curtis because you can't get through an evening without attacking a guest?
I'm just saying that musical theater might seem well-crafted and commercial, but it's outsider art. It's a gay Jewish form. It's freaks using other minority groups and other people standing in for themselves to tell their own stories because they're the only ones who get that there are human universals because they have to. And when people go after these songwriters, or when they go after later brill building writers like Carole King or Jerry Goffin or Ellie Greenwich and Phil Spector,
You do have a winning personality like Phil Spector.
and they say that they exploited the black singers who had hits with their songs when a lot of the writers got next to nothing also, when they go after Paul Simon for making Graceland, how dare he go to South Africa during apartheid without asking the ANC for permission? How dare he work with those great musicians and bring them new fans and invent world music?
He could have worked with the ANC and got the same album made.
Well, why doesn't he spend his life apologizing for that then? I'm saying people who have a problem with all these songwriters for their racism and their acts of appropriation, 9 times out of 10, they're having a Wagner problem. They're having a problem with them for being Jews. They're saying it taints everything they create. How dare Amy Winehouse bring back that soul sound? How dare Jews rap?
Well, except Drake, he's allowed.
Exactly. Thank you. And how dare Jews touch on Christian themes? How dare Irving Berlin write White Christmas, or Johnny Marks write Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Touch on Christian themes all you want. Write about reindeer all you want, but don't attack my mother's faith and expect me to laugh. That's all I'm saying. It's like Kay said, maybe you should take this personally. Maybe I just have a problem with you, not the group you belong to.
Well, you don't need to have a problem with me anymore. I'm going to bed. Good night, all. Thanks so much for coming out and seeing the show.
Good night.
Yeah, when he got his degree in music, this is the stuff he wrote about, though he's never had his undergraduate senior essay published. He probably should. It's a subject he's a little touchy about.
Is that right?
I'm sorry your trip is ending on this note.
Well, it started on this note also. You can't say we didn't give it a try, Gare.
Obviously, I was hoping it would turn out differently, but I'll admit defeat. What time is your flight tomorrow?
I'm on one more panel in the conference at 11. We'll just take our stuff and go there. Our flight is late afternoon. Gary.
Yeah?
You were good. Tonight the show was interesting.
Yeah, it was good. I was impressed.
You should feel good about it. I mean, I'm not sorry we went.
Thanks. Get some sleep.
Lights down. End of scene 7. Scene 8. Lights come up on Eytan standing alone near the edge of the stage. He addresses the audience.
I'm a Sabra, but I don't remember much about my early years in Israel when I felt like an Israeli. I remember a quality of sunlight on the white stone buildings in Jerusalem. I remember a beautiful beach, a few images like photo stills in our old apartment. My mother's a Sabra. My father's from Brooklyn, so English came as easy as Hebrew. Sometimes, once I felt like an American, we'd visit the aunts in Tel Aviv. But in all the years I was growing up in New Jersey, it was understood. Someday I'd make my parents proud and undo our family Yerida, our shameful descent. I would make Aliyah forever and move home. They put me through college here, but after that, they used the promise of graduate school and future financial support as bait. And so I went back. I did my 2 years of military service, and I hated it. I hated Army life, hated the machismo for all that they let gay soldiers come out there before they did here. You keep your head down for the most part. You just make it through. I hated some of what our military was doing, and I hated the people on the other side for making us do it, offering us no constructive way out. I hated those people on the other side for making the reactionary Likud politicians that I hated sound reasonable and just. It should have been a comfort to be around such large number of Jews all of a sudden. It wasn't. I missed the suburban New York bratdom where I grew up. I missed college where we were a tiny fraction of the population. I didn't need everyone around me to be as intense and rude and self-absorbed as I am. So, once I stuck it out and earned the right to spend my adulthood there, I left, and I knew I'd never go back. I made Eureka and I followed my parents' example and broke a mother's heart, but what can you do? I chose that moment to come out. I chose that moment to come out to them, just to give the knife a twist. And I decided to make Aliyah as a gay man and move to San Francisco. And once again, I was part of that ingathering for all of 2 years. I hated the drizzle and chill. I got laid. I went to political events. I played music. But some people just belong in diaspora. Some groups, maybe. It brings out the best in them. I knew another conflicted, self-hating Jew in San Francisco who used to say, Jews are like manure. In overwhelming amounts, overwhelming numbers, it's too much. But sprinkle us everywhere, a little here, a little there, and nice things grow. I came to feel that way about gays also. When we run the place, when we get to feel too safe, too comfortable, too much at home, we lose something, and it gets too intense for everybody. That's what San Francisco was like for me. So once again, I stepped down like a bar mitzvah boy descending from the bima, which is the last time I've been up on any damn bima in any damn shul. I embraced my 2 Eurytas. I bummed around. I tried Hollywood and New York City. I tried Nashville and felt a little too exotic there, even for my tastes. And now I find myself in Kansas City of all random places, as bland and solid and Midwestern as the food, where many of the men feel a need to dress in where many of the men who feel a need to dress in drag have wives or girlfriends who crack the whip and run their lives outside the gay bars, and the guys have kids they run home to and take to Little League, and they couldn't imagine raising kids with another man. They could never leave the gyno-controlled universe behind. They go to church and skulk around and repent for every furtive act of transgression. Or they congratulate themselves for furtive acts of transgression. They can't make up their minds. It's not an edifying spectacle, but it doesn't affect me directly. I'm in a good relationship, which is, again, quite random, shacked up with the despised kid brother of my high school best friend. Meanwhile, my parents have retired to Tel Aviv as if to make up for what I did, and we keep contact to a minimum. I write songs with Gary, silly songs, sillier than any Tom Lehrer songs, for Gary to perform in drag in a gay bar. And it's not a credit anyone wants to see on a resume, and we make even less money doing that than we do at our other jobs. I'm not comfortable here. I'm not happy. I'm not assimilated. But I'm not angry and unhappy enough to leave. And so, maybe that means I'm home.
Lights down. End of scene 8. Scene 9. Lights are low in the guest bedroom. We can barely see the outlines of Curtis and Kay in the dark. He lies in bed. She sits huddled near the foot of the bed. He wakes up, becomes aware of where she is.
Okay.
Yeah?
You okay, baby?
Yeah, I'm restless. Thought I'd be
feel
less likely to wake you up if I moved down here.
You feel sick? You need your insulin?
No, I'm fine.
You bugged by Eytan?
You handled him fine. I'm afraid my brother will think it's Eytan. That's why we couldn't reconnect. And maybe it's easier to blame Eytan. It's a way out. Because I should want to reconnect with Gary more than I do. Guy gets up on stage. He puts himself out there.
Maybe someday they'll break up and you and Gary will get closer.
I don't see that happen. I don't think it would matter.
Maybe you should take the money if it makes him feel better.
I am not touching the money. And I can't be a big sister who supports him and delights in him and turns to him with my own news. It's too late. It's too late to start. Since he was little, I saw how Mom delighted in him. I saw the difference. I knew that's what a son means. That's what it means for a parent to love a child. She'd look at me and I look a lot like her. You know, hated that. Hated getting older and having me replace her or something. She was most vicious on the days when I felt happy and looked good. Something broken, something missing in her touch, if she touched me at all, and the way she looked at me, the tone of voice, a hardness, a coldness, and something in me has to make sure there's something missing from how I feel about Gary. It goes back to that basic primal ache. My mother doesn't love me.
Shh, baby, stop.
My mother doesn't love me. It's a void. It's a vacuum. You can't breathe in it. Nothing you do matters. Everything you touch turns to shit. What's the point of being alive when something is so basic as that?
Baby, it's gonna be all right.
I see him happy. I see him successful at something, and I think, spoils to the victor, spoils to the male child. This is how she meant it to be.
Hush. You want me to sing to you?
Sure. That'd be nice.
Oh, baby, let's stay together, loving you whether times are good or bad, happy or sad.
End of scene 9. Scene 10. Lights up on the yard. The stretching.
Hey,
Hey,
we're gonna be taking off. I just thought we should find somebody to say goodbye to.
Gary isn't up yet. I stepped outside to let him sleep in. Sorry I went off on you last night. I should take your word for it that it's me you have a problem with and not all Jews writing songs.
Oh, that's good, I guess. That's the way to take it. So you spend any time on this yard? I see you got a garden.
Well, people upstairs never come out here, so it's basically ours. Landlord sends somebody to mow the lawn. I try to garden, but I can't get the tomato plants to give us a single goddamn tomato.
Yeah, I was noticing that. I think your problem is his aphids. Get the garden store to sell you some ladybugs. You should clear it up.
Ladybugs. Huh.
Hey, Curtis.
Your brother's still in bed.
Well then, will you thank him for us for the place to stay?
A sure thing.
And thank you also
For the hospitality.
as warm as ever.
So this is where the party is.
Not a whole lot of party at this hour.
Yeah, but you guys were hanging out.
We were just saying goodbye.
You up for some breakfast? I can do French toast.
That sounds great, but we'll just grab something at the hotel.
Oh, okay. Well, Kay, I was gonna ask you, would you send me a copy of that book of yours on Fanny Hurst?
Gary, you do not want to read that book.
You're right, he doesn't.
Send it anyway. And please think about what we talked about.
Gary,
Just think about it.
I just want to say you're a good brother. I'm a lousy sister.
Don't start with that.
But a
now.
lot of families, they're what you build, not what you get. You guys have built something. We're building something. Let's be happy for each other and give up.
That's very wise, Kay. That's beautiful.
I'll call you.
Okay.
Curtis, it was good seeing you.
Be good.
Eytan?
So long. So, what about me? Don't I get any French toast?
I don't know.
Don't be blue. I had a good idea for a song this morning. Remember how I said your sister wanted to bring it? She wanted to throw down?
Son, don't. This isn't the time.
All I'm saying, throw down rhymes with hoe down, and hoe down is an awesome hook. We spell it as two words, H-O and down.
Not now.
The major cat fight in a honky-tonk bar, girls yanking hair and screaming and beer bottles flying and the crowd cheering every time there's another hoe down.
Enough.
It's not my fault, Gary, that it didn't work. And it's not because I deliberately sabotaged it. I mean, it was an organic thing, a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
It's good they're happy and doing what they do. Let's salute them from across the huge canyon or chasm between us and get on with our lives.
Yeah. Hoe down. Huh?
Hoe down.
Lights down. And that's the end.
Oh, goodness gracious. Welcome to the Quarantine Players. Tonight, we have a reading of The Politics of Fabulousness, a new musical in development by Judy Klass, and we're very excited to partner with her on this production. So let's get started. Let's meet Lori, our director.
Hi, everyone. As AJ said, I'm Lori Molstein. I am the director for this show. I have performed in a couple of Quarantine Players shows, and this isn't my first time directing, but my first time directing with the Quarantine Players. So with that, I'm going to ask the cast just to take themselves off of mute and put themselves on video and introduce themselves. So I'm going to start.
Oh, and say where you're from.
And say where you're from. When I am here in Fairfax, Virginia, and spend part of my time in San Diego, California, but I'm right here now in Fairfax. So I'm going to move to San Diego and go to Sarah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Sarah Lucchini and I'm in sunny San Diego and I'll be playing the character of Kay.
Thank you, Sarah. And now we'll move on to Cameron, and go ahead and introduce yourself and your character and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Cameron Lee Conlon. I am also from near the DC area. I'm from Manassas. I will be playing Gary.
Thank you, Cameron. And Mike Young.
Hi, I'm Mike Young. I'm from Sterling, Virginia, and I will be playing Eytan.
Thanks, Mike. And Trevor.
Hello, I'm Trevor Butler. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I will be playing Mr. Curtis.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Judy Klass. Judy, do you mind putting yourself on video and just saying hi?
Or you can just say hi.
Hello, I'm Judy,
Hi.
and I'm the playwright, and I grew up in New York, New Jersey, and now I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my play. Play with you.
Thanks, Judy. We're so delighted to be performing your show tonight, and we hope everybody enjoys. So I think we'll go ahead and get started, yeah?
Yes.
All right. Chris is in the bar.
Oh, fine, if you're gonna be like that.
I totally want a drink. Thank you.
If you're gonna be like that, I get my stage back.
Okay, and you can have it. So thank you to all of our actors, our brilliant director, and of course Judy for giving us such a wonderful play.
Thank you guys for realizing it. It was just such a pleasure. It was just wonderful.
Okay, so Judy, why don't you tell us about the origin of this play?
I had this silly idea that it would be interesting to write a play where everybody was right and everybody was wrong. And sort of understand a little bit of each person's perspective, and I can sort of understand even with the fight between Kay and Eytan, I can sort of understand both of their points of view. And then I just heedlessly wrote this thing, la 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 la, not really realizing I was skipping into an absolute minefield. And so this play has been a semi-finalist in a bunch of contests, but nobody wants to go near it. Nobody even before this ever gave it a reading. I wrote it 4 or 5 years ago, and I basically stopped sending it out. I just realized I had written the most scary, offensive play that just exploded in people's faces and upset everyone, and sort of gave up on it. And then you gave it a chance, and I really appreciate that.
It's great.
We do have actually a question in the chat.
If the person wanted to speak up, they could unmute and ask. But if you wanted,
I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Phoebe.
Hi. Yeah, great play. I mean, Judy, what a minefield of just, and what I found so interesting is that I think starting like at the beginning of the play, I definitely had certain sides that I related to more that I was on, but as you had everybody making their arguments, I just felt like, well, that sounds right too, and that sounds right from all these different sides, and you're so right, like everybody was right and wrong at the same time, and it was just crazy. But you dove into so much, not only just from different people's perspectives, but from that you just already knew in your head, or did this take just hours of research?
I don't know about research. I mean, some of these are based on arguments I've had with people, but some of them are based on arguments I've had with myself, where I'm sort of like, bad person, you shouldn't think that, So I did some research on the Harlem Renaissance and Mulebone, and I actually wanted to like Imitation of Life. I thought, because I also teach some Jewish studies courses, so this relates to some stuff I do. And Fanny Hurst is interesting in both her and Edna Ferber as sort of Jewish women creating things, because the same thing happens in Showboat, where you have someone passing as white, and in some ways it might be a metaphor for Edna Ferber too. So when I finally read Imitation of Life, I really wanted to like it. It's not a good book. I mean, it's justly forgotten. But so I did some research on Fanny Hurst and the folks involved in the Harlem Renaissance, but I knew some of it because I also teach some Langston Hughes and stuff like that. So that's probably the most research that I did for it.
Nice
and fleshed out.
The tension in and around turfdom and J.K. Rowling's could not be more current.
That got popped in recently. But when J.K. Rowling was just taken to the cleaners, I was like, further proof that my play will never be produced, and I wouldn't write it in the first place. But anyway.
It's a conversation that needs to be had. These issues, like I said in one of our earlier talks, this is a pasteurizing script. None of these issues and none of these points of views are without flaw, because everything is tainted by our own bias. I noticed within the monologues, everyone was admitting their own form of appreciation of another culture, with Gary with Margarita, or Kay with Black culture, Curtis with the anime culture and everything. There were assumptions that we were having to overcome because we like these cultures, and everyone enjoys learning about other things and learning about the other, and we want to be able to appreciate and grow and learn and maybe integrate parts of it that we like into ourselves, but it's trepidatious for everyone involved, and it leads to making horrible assumptions, like Curtis's character thinking that this girl from Japan is gonna like anime. Mm-hmm. That's not a hurtful, wrong assumption, but it's based on stereotypes that he didn't even know that he had.
Well,
And I
and
think
it also delves into the whole issue that you do bring up. Eytan brings it up explicitly in the last scene in terms of appropriation. You know, so while everybody has an appreciation for a different culture, it's also a question where, you know, they're not appropriating. They really do have that interest.
exactly.
You know,
And how to walk that line.
right, right.
And that's very tricky for me as a teacher, you know, and why do I have a right to teach? And then also as a writer, why do I have a right to write? You know, so these are sort of things that I walk around, you know, worrying about or beating my head against the wall about. So I put a lot of them into play.
I respect it. I think these are conversations that need to be had. I've said that from the beginning. I like how bold it is. I think that's the mark of a great artist. Like the greatest artists are the ones who make that bold. Everybody else is afraid to say this thing, but I'm gonna say it. You know, it reminds me in a way. I don't know if y'all ever heard the song called "I'm Not Racist" by Jordan Lucas. Like, it got some flag back when that came out, but no, it's a conversation that needs to have. Like, he did it. One rap was from the perspective of a white man, and the other one was from the perspective of a black man. And even though, and I love it, the picture of it is literally both of them hugging at the end. And I think that's what it's about. I think it's about being bold enough to have these conversations. I may be right, I may be wrong. They say it's your side, it's their side, then there's the truth. And I think that's the way that we get to the truth, is by being bold enough to make that step, by having that conversation and being able to shake hands. We may not agree, we may agree to disagree, but at least we can say that we had the conversation and we can still respect each other. I think respect is all that should be like given. Like, we don't have to like each other, but we should respect each other.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree with you, Trevor. It's kind of like the having the conversation, and we've gotten to the point where we don't understand each other because we don't have the conversation. We don't have any of these conversations.
And it makes, I mean, you know, and I see why, because everybody, and I hate to say it, but like, we're in this generation where everybody's a victim. And I think that is, of course, like, these years of you experiencing these things, quite naturally, you're going to become sensitive or hypersensitive to it. But I know a piece of that is like crazy to say, but I think we kind of have to put a little bit to the side. It's like, okay, I'm sensitive, but how much is this, like, they're truly like trying to discredit me as a human being, and how much is like me being just a little hypersensitive because this has been my experience. And I think being able to delineate the two and being able to see how somebody may have a good intention that just may come off the wrong way, or they just don't understand. Like, Eytan, it's hard, man, watching Eytan. I'm like, dude, I can't stand this cat, and I do understand some of what he's trying to say. But even with the conversation about how dare they write, yeah, and they did create the Broadway standard, but they didn't have me in mind when they wrote that. You know, and I think that's a conversation that, you know, and I think that's what.
And it's a layers thing, because I'm sorry, I think that Mike.
No, you're good. No, I love it. You know,
I think Mike is trying to respond. Mike's trying to respond.
Oh, I was going to say that when I was reading that was really what brought me into this, the play, and that made me want to be in this play in the first place, was those particular lines from Eytan. I had never really thought of early Broadway musicals as outsider art. And I think that's a very interesting point of view. I don't agree with what Eytan says. I think that you can have something that is created as outsider art and still be culturally appropriative and still be racist.
Facts. I love West Side Story. I think it's timeless. However, Stephen Sondheim does not agree with culturally conscious casting. So he didn't have me in mind when they made that. Like, that's problematic. I love Disney. You should see my wall right now. I love Disney. I'm reading books Disney did not have me in mind when he made those animations.
Disney didn't have you in mind, Trevor.
No.
Disney.
Many people didn't.
So it's like, yeah. I'm sorry, you know.
No, you're right. And that's why I think Eytan's line specifically about, yes, these were gay Jewish boys who were othered, but at the same time, these gay Jewish boys in New York City writing about cowboys in Oklahoma in the rural, poor parts of the world was just as exotic and foreign to them as this. So they had your best interests in mind, but they were products of their time with their own biases to fight against, people to appease who were giving them money to make this show. So they had to lace in some of the beliefs of their patrons and the people that were handing them the money. And again, it's the politics of fabulousness.
Yeah.
How many asses can I kiss without slapping too many wrists to get this out there, to get momentum, which is exactly the problem that Judy is facing now. This was a conversation that Sondheim and them are probably having because, yeah, everyone is a little bit racist. Even nowadays, even back then, Avenue Q taught us that the most well-intentioned people will still have biases that they don't know. Kay talked about that even with the trans people, talking about the fact that, yes, trans women that were raised as boys for a certain amount of time will have some of those carryover points that will allow them to feel empowered in their later, ages as a woman when they have come into themselves, but they're still fighting those biases themselves because of what they've been taught versus what they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody in the play sees themselves as victims.
Exactly. And mind you, Gary's just sitting there going, I just want to sing in my dress.
Yeah.
It's like, why did you cast me as the Hufflepuff out of this whole group?
Because you sing so well, honey.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, I think Curtis is that too, though. I mean, I love him. He's the one that I think is the most sensible, but at the same time, a piece of me wants him to I think it's great that he supports her, but I think he kind of checks her too. But even he doesn't. I wish he kind of checked her a little bit more.
That's a really good point, Trevor, in terms of Curtis's character, and maybe Judy, this is something to explore further. There are some points where, especially in his monologue, he says, "I just wanted to bash his face in," whatever the term was.
Yeah.
And so he's very even keeled, but there are some moments where we see just some kind of underlying, even Curtis has a breaking point.
Like he said about his mother, he said they're perfectly calm until you get near their family or try to hurt their family. Right. Curtis has embodied that feminine side.
And that's how I read it. It's like, okay, it's all cool. It's not until he's coming for Kay that's when I'm like, all right, wait a minute, whoa there, buddy. That's when he gets offended. Or with Sakiko, it wasn't until her family was rejecting her while she was dying. I think, that's how I read it. And I think for me, the last time just reading it, I think you see some of his turn up when it comes to talking about the swipe at Christianity. And I think that's cool to see too, even though I disagree with Curtis. I do feel like he's being hypersensitive to the swipe at Christian women thing.
Because it's his family.
Yeah.
He was, just because he is not religious, he admits he was raised in the church, and potentially if he was raised in a Black Baptist church near or around Kansas or whatever.
Take that very seriously.
It's a commune. Everyone is auntie. I was raised in and around that culture, and it's very, very similar. It's very insular. It's very familiar. So to you, attacking the Christian values, not itself, not the ridiculous of the religion, but its values, is attacking your family's values, which means attacking your mom.
Right.
Yeah. It's very interesting. But once again, shout out to you, Judy. Shout out.
It's so good.
I will say that the way I met Trevor is you did it as a monologue. You did Curtis's monologue. Was it in a class or what was the content?
I was in the process of applying for grad school, and I'm trying to find different monologues and stuff. And so I'm on this, I think it's a playexchange.org. I think that's the name of the website.
Yep, the new Play Exchange, shout out.
Yeah. And I was looking for monologue, and that was the one, I don't think I got one monologue off of that website, but I skimmed through and I saw the Curtis monologue. I'm like, what is this? This is cool. So I read the play and I'm like, yo. And so I just sent Judy an email just saying, thank you for making this. Where do you see this? I don't, most people aren't bold enough to write about that. And it, we're beating a dead horse, but there is something beautiful about that. I think, it may be uncomfortable. We may hate each other afterwards, but we do need to talk about it. Otherwise, we just have our opinions, go in our little echo chambers, repeating what we want to hear, and we never get to the truth. So I think it's so amazing that you were able to just to capture those echo chambers and put them on display in this play and allow us the opportunity to read for these characters and put voices to life to these characters.
Well, thank you. And you contacting me about it, again, I hadn't sent the play out in a long time. I just given up. Might be why I sent it to Quarantine Players. So you might have gotten all of this happening and made me decide to send it out again. But yeah, no, it's all.
Judy, I never asked you, but when did you first write? When did you first start on this, and when did you first? I know you said you made some edits pretty recently, but when did you first like complete it as well? Like, how long has this been percolating in the circulation?
It's been around, I think, since like 2015 or 2016. I think is probably when I finished the first draft of it, and it's gone through some changes. A lot of it though is the same, and sort of. And then sort of when Trump was in, I sort of felt like so many people in this play are under siege. I was also not that interested in sending it out in the last few years because of that. It felt like sort of piling on people who really were directly under attack. And I think I just felt like people have enough problems. They don't need this play. But
yeah.
But it's important because this is, if this had been done the traditional way, had this managed to get to an actual theater troupe, we may not have had a cast that so accurately represents the characters. You cast a gender fluid drag queen with a country singing history with mommy issues from a pseudo-conservative military family as Gary.
Well, now I know why AJ said I have the perfect Gary, and I'm like,
so like,
it was that, and the fact that Sarah and Cam could pass for brother and sister.
Mm-hmm. You actually look like you could belong to my dad's family, Sarah.
And you might, I mean, time.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? But these issues are important, and giving voices to these characters. Had this gone traditional, had you gotten this put out in like 2016, and like Arlington Players or someone had gotten it, this would have been viral very quickly had this gotten to Fringe. Very, very easily.
I think
it just offended everyone. It offended gay companies. It offended, sort of feminist companies because there's only one woman character. I think of it as a play. It has 3 songs. I mean, just everything about it. It's neither fish nor fowl, and it makes everyone nervous, and it's just like
I think the thing here is you have to understand that we would need to market this down. We keep wanting to aim this at people the age of our characters, 30s to 40s. This play is the big mouth of plays. Holds all of this crap up to a light and shines it like, look, this is the problem. Look at it. Look at it. You see yourself in this. Fix it.
Yeah.
Because we all see parts of ourselves who's like, oh, I agree with this person. Wait, I shouldn't agree with this person right now because they're not the.
How do you feel about it?
What?
How do you feel about that, Cam?
It's fun.
No.
And I will say this. I mean, to your point. I mean, to be completely honest, I have never seen someone in drag perform before until tonight.
What?
So
that was a horrible representation of a drag performance.
No, I know. I'm not saying like it was bad. I'm just saying like I know.
I know. I'm just setting the bar. Like the bar is like under the carpet at this point.
Yeah.
I'm sending you some links. We're gonna send you some links to stuff.
But you see what I'm saying? So, and I'm gonna be like, I'm from Memphis, so it's like I ain't never. This is a whole new world. So,
but my friends who are drag. No, she's never seen a drag queen. But like Kurt, like dude, my thing is like you live in Memphis and you've never seen a drag performer. I have friends who are husband and husband drag performers who also run a leatherworking shop for kinks and crap in Memphis.
Yeah, but I think about this, man. I grew up there, but I left at 16, and you know what I'm saying? Like it just I missed it. The only thing I knew was homosexuality. I didn't know what transgender meant. I didn't even know what transphobia meant until like 2017. So it's just these things that are ingratiated in our culture. And all I'm saying is, I'm gonna be honest. Coming from that, I initially had like a kind of like fringy kind of thing when it came to drag, but seeing you, then I'm oh wow, no, that's okay.
this is a human being. Okay, like, and so I'm just saying this is where it starts. Forcing us to have this conversation, forcing us to see these people like as people. So I thank you once again, because it made me look like wow, no, you sound like a fucking idiot. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate these moments, because this is where it starts. It starts by being bold enough to do these things. And just, I mean, I thank you. I really do thank everybody's bravery, and I thank you for being able to make that, because it made me want to look more into this. So no, I don't know what to say, because I probably dug myself.
I'll cry.
Well, I have to tell you, when AJ, I reached out to AJ and I said, by the way, you know, 'cause I've been in a couple of their, you know, her plays, and you're right, Phoebe, Trevor made some amazing points. I'm gonna
And has a wonderful singing voice, as it turns out.
Y'all are so sweet.
So when AJ came to me and I said I want to direct, she said to me, we'll read this one. And so I read it, and you know, all of the topics, it covered a lot of stuff, but none of it shocked me. None of it was like, oh, we can't talk about that. So maybe I was just the right person to come along and say, yeah, I'll direct it. The only thing I looked at it was, wow, this is really, and Judy, you and I have had this conversation, so I'm not speaking out of school. I just felt it was very academic.
No, they do. I mean, can you tell that I'm in academia? Can you tell?
I love it.
It's just like,
No, you made me want to pick up a book. I'm like, I need to read a book. That's what I need to do.
It helped. It lended credibility to what was happening, because had you just treated this as a bunch of normal people trying to have a conversation using everyday examples, we would have tuned out. It wouldn't have lended any credibility to the arguments whatsoever. And I think the academia helped that a lot.
yeah. So, but that was the only thing that scared me, not the topics. And after hearing you, you know, bring up your points, I'm saying to myself, maybe I should have been a little bit more scared about approaching the topics. Oh no.
No, I think it's something that needs to be, I don't know, because I think it's doing in its own way what West Side Story did. Well, you know, not in the first time, because I think they had other people besides Puerto Ricans playing. But you know what it eventually did, like this platform for people to be seen. What Raisin in the Sun did for, you know, for the cast when that came out in the 1950s, like, oh no, these are people.
Like
Walter
RuPaul's.
Lee.
But West Side Story had a transgender character in it.
It did?
Yeah.
In the original?
You're right.
Yeah, in the movie, yes. And they're all like, "You're a girl, go home." They're all yelling at anybody.
Right.
There was that, and that was continued. That character was actually the inspiration for Angel in Rent. That's why Angel was a Latina drag queen that eventually was turned into a Latina trans woman. Which is wonderful. They changed some pronouns and they changed a couple words so that the character is now canonically a trans woman instead of just a drag queen, because the conversation has shifted.
I didn't know that.
Well, this is what theater does. We sit around, we tell stories, we you know, like we used to buy a fire, now we buy a computer or buy footlights when we get back into theaters. We tell each other stories, we live in each other's worlds for a little bit.
It's
and
wonderful.
When we come out a little bit wiser and a little bit more educated, and theater can take on these topics. Carousel took on domestic violence, racism. I mean, this is what we do. And we have to be bold enough to take risks and to find our audiences like we do after we do the shows.
I really want to thank Quarantine Players, though, for bringing original work.
So thank you so much, AJ, for caring about playwrights and showcasing new playwrights in sort of a world that does not care about that at all, and celebrating people doing, as you say, full-length plays instead of just another 10-minute play festival. You know,
yes.
You know,
I can go on for hours about the evils of 10-minute play festivals.
Oh God, yeah.
They're miserable.
10-minute plays, and I enter them, but it's sort of nice to have something this long and this dense and also this politically tricky that you take a chance. I really appreciate it.
Take a chance on me.